Fucking A.
You know, we're live, by the
Mm-hmm.
way. I haven't.
Oh.
You know what? I know I look like a total slob, like most of the time, but um, usually I do try to take care of myself. Right? I try to go get a haircut every now and again, and now that I'm out of the air, it used to be like every week we'd go get our haircuts, right? And then once I got out, I'm like, oh, every 2 weeks is probably fine. And then after a while, I was like, well, what's a month? I can do a month without a haircut. And then it got to the point where I'm like, every just when it starts to get in the way is when I'll get a haircut. And that's kind of where I was. And then I thought, I'm going to start cleaning myself up a little bit. I'll start, especially when I started growing the really long beard. I was like,
Right.
let me go to the barber and I'll have him give me a nice little tight haircut that'll last me a couple months, and then I'll get him to trim the beard up. And I was at that point where I was like, it's been about a month or so. It's probably about time I get a haircut. It's starting to get a little crazy. And then this pandemic hit and everything shut down. So my
Mm-hmm.
barber is closed. I can't go to my, and I don't know if there are any barbers that are open. If any of them are, I know some of them are probably doing it within their house and like kind of getting
Right.
away, being sneaky and shit. But my barber they're retired cops, so like they're very obviously like bound by the law still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
still feel that requirement, so I haven't been able to go now. Like my hair's all out of control, and I forgot to grab a hat before we started recording, and I'm like, I'm not interrupting you to go get a hat from the storage area, so like I'll just go with my crazy hair today.
Yeah. I feel you. That's like exactly how I am about showering, actually.
Once a month,
No, no. I know what you mean. This. I was telling my dad earlier. I was like, yeah, this whole pandemic thing and being on quarantine, you kind of start to realize like the amount of things that you've taken for granted because like you just don't have access to it right now. Like I was telling you earlier about my tire and stuff, and like going to get air in it, and like you can't just go anywhere and do that right now because shit's closed. So I have to go like do it myself, and then like it just becomes this whole thing. And you know how lazy I am, and I'm already like, oh, this is just too much. I'm at the point where like I'd rather sell my car than have to like put air in it. Like I'll just put it up on offer up and maybe somebody will buy it.
You know what? I'm guilty of the same exact thing. Like when I have any kind of like minor not necessarily minor, but like say oh well, we're coming up on time to do services on the transmission. I'm like, nope, time to get a new car. I'm not gonna pay $60 at a drive-in lube and go and have them fix my car for $60. What are you, crazy? I'll go sit down with a car salesman and have him whip me up a new one.
It's too much work. Or like when I was younger, I had this little Volkswagen Cabriolet, and I was driving around without insurance, just like a boss, right? And then finally, it caught up with me. I got this letter in the mail that was like, "Your registration is like getting suspended because we have no insurance on file for you." And I was like, I'm just gonna sell my car then instead of like getting insurance. I was just like, you know what, dude? I'll just sell this car. Then I ended up selling it and like realizing later that that was probably a bad idea because I was out of a
remember
vehicle.
remember when I had the El Camino and it was a salvage title, and like
Yeah.
getting that thing when we got back from Iraq, I went to go get it registered because it like lapsed while I was gone, of course. And I mean, it was parked in a barn in Wisconsin for that period of time. And the when I went to go get it registered again in Kansas this time, I guess, um, it was just such a hassle, and I was very very close. If it were not the El Camino, I would have probably been like, you know what, I'm just going to trade this in for literally anything else, because
Right.
I am about done with this thing. So no, I get it. Like even like the most minor like logistical kind of or administrative uh, inconvenience in car
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ownership, I'm always like, Chuck, get this shit out of here.
But
I don't
isn't
want
that
to
how
deal with
we
this.
are too? Like especially you and I who dealt with a lot of that stuff in the military, we're like, if we can avoid bureaucracy at all costs, it's like I don't want to stand in a line. I don't want to have to fill out any document. I'd rather just like toss it to the wind
remember
instead of go like have to sign something. You want me to
remember
come in and fill
Anna,
out paper?
what? Like I'm already almost out to the parking lot. You want me to come back inside? Are you crazy? Like, oh, so you're still in the building? Well, I'm very close to the door. The remember like we used to go through those SRP things where you got to go like
Yeah,
door to
yeah.
door, and
Of,
well,
of
you
course.
were the guy who people had to
Yeah, I
go
was
to.
running them. I was running
um,
those.
we used to. I know when we left or before we left, it was up on the hill, and it was like 3 or 4 trailer buildings that you had to make your way through.
Yeah.
This one dude, I forget it, Arkillian. We used to call him AK, just because it was shorter. No one knew how to pronounce his last name. Um, that's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
He said something to me, like he was almost done, and I was about halfway done. And for those at home, you have to get like stamps in certain areas to make sure that your everything is up to date, so that you can deploy and make sure your medical and dental and all that crap is done. And they'll like stamp, or they'll give you an appointment when you have to go and get something fixed, or you fix it there on the spot, whatever. Anyways, like you end up with like this stack of papers that have been stamped and filled out, like your will and all your medical records and everything that you need to take with you or whatever, bundled up and make sure it's safe. Um, and this dude AK, he said something about my wife, and it was something like I forget what he said. It was it was a complicated period. He said something that he shouldn't have, and I reached over and I grabbed his packet and I just ripped it right down the middle, and then I threw it on the floor and it just scattered all about or whatever, and people were walking on it and shit. And he was like, "Oh no!" And the dude was like 4 feet tall, so like he's scrambling around trying to collect up his papers, and he was like on the verge of tears. He had to go and start over and get everything. They had to have somebody
Oh,
like
my God.
walk him place to place, because they're like, well, he's already been through here, but his paperwork was damaged. I don't know if he ever told on me, or I never got in trouble for it, but
That's classic.
yeah, that was speaking of bureaucracy and the never-ending lines and shit.
And here's a good one for you. Speaking of military bureaucracy, when I chaptered or when I got out of the army finally, I had to go to CIF, right, and return all my equipment or whatever. So I went one day and I returned everything that I had, and they were like, "Oh, you're still missing this, 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 and this." And so by each thing, this lady had like put her like initials next to each thing, right? This black pen.
Yeah.
And so I go, oh man, I can look for all this crap. And it was like ridiculous stuff, like stuff that I was like, I definitely lost that when I was deployed. You know what I mean? Like really, like kind of, I mean, and like full disclosure, like I probably could get in trouble for this because it was like a gas mask, like some messed up shit. And so I went back to my house and I was like, fuck, dude, like I don't know where any of this stuff is. And it was like probably about 3 grand worth of stuff that I'd get charged on my way out. And I was like, fuck, what do I do? So finally, I just like gave in and I was like, you know what, dude? I'll use a different color pen and I'll just sign like a random initial next to all of the other ones. And so when I went back to the CIF and like I found one of the things. And so I had the thing, I had the packet, and I was like, here, I said, this is what I was missing, and I brought it back. And they didn't even bat an eye, dude. They were just like, oh, okay. And then they signed off on it, and I was like, fucking A. Like I want like I would have been so screwed because I was missing like sensitive item shit. Stuff that like they'd be like, we're gonna have to charge you like a shitload of money. And then I just like cheated basically. And like the funny thing is I think because I was human resources, like I knew all the little loopholes, and I go, oh, they're idiots. They don't check that shit. So in the end, I was just like middle finger on the way out,
Well, I could have told you
which
that,
was
because that was my lane, right? The CIF and the processing and all that stuff. When I went through, not when I was getting out. When I was getting out, I was very fortunate because, right, I was med boarded out, so they kind of scheduled my. I had all my stuff neatly like put together, and it was all like I hadn't touched it in years because I was in recruiting, and so it was all. I made sure it was all there, and it wasn't necessarily clean, right? But it was all there. And by the way, while I'm here, hey Jay
oh
Coop,
yeah,
hey Mike in Manitoba, welcome to the chat. If you're in the chat right now,
the guys.
we'd certainly appreciate you just letting us know that you're there, and we'll give you a little shout out. Not that it means much, but it means much to us. So,
Mhm, mhm.
and then if
And
you
a
could throw
like.
us a
Don't
like,
forget
that'd
to
be great.
like.
Yeah, yeah. And if
Yeah,
you're
of
new,
course.
hit the subscribe button. Why not? Hey, while I'm on my knees begging. Um,
As you say that, somebody leaves the chat. They're like, nope.
Yeah, this is not for me. No, thank you. He didn't
Yeah,
comb his hair for
not
this,
cool. Subscribe.
so how
What?
dare he? Um, but no, I had all my stuff in the duffel bags, right? And they scheduled me, and it was kind of like a long waiting period where I was waiting for them to process me and all that. Uh, and they one day I get like a call or I get an email saying, "Hey, your out like your final out date is on Thursday," and it's like Tuesday. So when I get this email, so I'm like, "Oh, okay. So what do I need to do?" And they're like, "Well, you need to schedule this, this, and this, and this, and process out and all this." And I was like, "Okie doke." I said, "I guess I'll head on down to Fort Knox then." So I head down to Fort Knox, grab all, I bring all my CIF stuff with me. And the best they can do is the morning of, like Thursday morning at 9 is when I final out.
Oh
Thursday
yeah.
morning at 7 is the only appointment they have for CIF. So I
Oh
had,
my
like,
God.
when I get there, and it may have been a little bit later because I was like, I needed about an hour to get to the final out place and get in line and all that. So I get to CIF, and I mean, I did a whirlwind, real quick clearing of of the army through Fort via Fort Knox, and like I get it all done on Wednesday. Go home, drive back down Thursday morning. Like I leave at like 5 in the morning to get down there by 7, and then I'm in CIF in line with my two duffel bags. I go to the guy and he's just like, "Hey man," he's looking through all my stuff. He's like, "Hey man, you're gonna have to be here and clean." And I was like, "Wrong." I said, "I got to be over at the building to final out at 9, so we need to make this happen like before 8:30 at the latest." And he was just like, he was livid. Like, this dude was mad. He's like, "No," he's like, "This shit is dirty. Like, you need to clean it." I was like, "I'll do my best, bud." And then I go back there and I'm sitting there with like a scrubber on my J list stuff or whatever for like a few minutes, like watching the clock until about 8:15. I'm like, "I gotta go, bud. I need you to sign off on my stuff." And he's like, "Ugh, just leave all your crap over here then." But yeah, that's what you gotta do, man.
Nice.
You just gotta, like, and then anytime they like yell at you, you just gotta go, "Hey man, I just found out about this on Tuesday, so like I don't know what
You
to tell
blame
you."
someone else,
Yeah, just
right?
immediately, because I wasn't ever going back to that place. Like, I don't care what they think of me there. I don't care what anybody thinks of me
Yeah,
anywhere.
you'll never see them again. Yeah, absolutely not.
So, oh, by
That's
the way, hey,
hilarious.
hey, King Cracker, welcome to the chat. Thank you for. I mean, we got 3 likes, so I assume that's you three guys, and we sure appreciate it. So, V, I know you
Nice,
had some
nice.
stuff on your mind that you wanted to talk about before. We're already 15 minutes into the show. I wanna make sure we have some time to cover
Oh yeah,
what we're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. But I know
Well,
you,
I can't.
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I had I had kind of an interesting incident happen the other day, and like I talked to you a little bit about it, but I kind of wanted to, I don't know, just give like a background on it, and then maybe we can like discuss it a little bit, and like even people in the chat, I'm really interested to know what they think of the situation, and I'm not. To preface this, I'm not I don't like hate women, I love women actually. I'm like a big fan. I have all their albums, you know what I mean?
Long time
Like
listener,
I
first time caller.
yeah, exactly. And like here's the thing is like I'm often like accused of being a misogynist, which I won't like I'm not going to deny that because I probably am. But at the same time like I grew up with sisters and I was raised by a single mom. So like I like have this genuine like concern for the well-being of women in general. I feel the need to protect them and I don't know if that's like a natural thing like back to like our genetics or biology or whatever you want to call it. But I feel this like general concern when I hear about like women in danger or women in situations and whatever, like I feel this need to protect them. And I don't know, maybe that's even like something that like I've watched too many like movies, where it's like the hero protects them. That's like we always joke about that. Like we have this like it doesn't matter like how dumb the girl is or like how what situation they put themselves in and probably at their fault you still feel the need to like I don't know like kind of coddle them I guess. And so that gets into like this whole like feminist thing where they're like, oh, we want to topple the patriarchy and blah 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 blah, and they're like whatever, they want to be independent but they're really not. Like I know a lot of girls that are they claim to be independent and yet they're extremely codependent on their husbands and their parents and like all these other situations where it's kind of like what like why do you claim to be that when you're nothing but like a hypocrite in that situation. So I digress here. I know I'm kind of like just babbling about nonsense at this point, but
Take
let
your
me get to the
time.
heat of the let me get to the heat, the meat and potatoes of the situation. So I had this situation. I was talking to this ex yesterday, who we've had kind of like a off and on past. We were in the military together. You know about her. I told you about her before. And I guess for the sake of this, we'll call her Tanya. So, so I spoke to her yesterday, and she tells me she divulges all this information to me about what she's going through, like in her personal life, right? Like serious stuff. And so essentially, it was like it started out low. You know how I have been like kind of off and on and talking a little bit to you here and there, and this and that. I'm like, sure, yeah, like. I'm not gonna like shun you and go, ignore you completely. I know we had a past, so I feel obligated, and at the same time, she's a girl, so I feel obligated to like console them, and so which probably goes back to being like a brother. But she goes, apparently she tried to commit suicide, right? Which was, and she did it the classic way with like the cry for help, where it's across and not down,
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So she didn't know what she was doing, or she knew that what she was doing, and like it didn't work out, right? So then the doctors tell her that she needs to like, do some time in like isolation in the funny farm or whatever. And so she's telling me all this, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Like I understand depression because I deal with it. Like what can you tell me if there's anything that I can like do? Because as much as I look at suicide as like a cowardly thing, like I still won't go. Well, just go fucking kill yourself then. I won't do that. So I go, well, let's get to the root of it. Like, what's the issue? Like what's causing all this? So then she tells me about this boyfriend that she has, or ex-boyfriend, I guess, which who really knows because I'm the ex-boyfriend, so she's confiding in me. She's using me for that purpose to like fill whatever void, that she's missing right now. So she tells me this ex-boyfriend or boyfriend, whatever, like beats the crap out of her, like pointed a gun at her head and like threatened her life and then like, shot her, which I don't know how true any of this is because she's kind of has a history of like lying about shit, you know. And so like I give her the benefit of the doubt, and I go, well, look, okay, this is interesting. Like what's going on? Like first of all, like first of all, like did you get the police involved? Did you get a restraining order? Did you do all these things that like you have access to prevent your life from being in danger? And she goes, this is what she says. She goes, oh well, he's gone now, so it doesn't matter. And I go, oh, okay, so that's how you justify it. So I'm like, and my point is this: is I'm trying to like find out how I can help her in this situation, like if anything, like with just sound advice and like emotional support, But she's like dumb. Like that's the only way that I can describe it to you is like, are you like so stupid that in this situation you want to put yourself in harm's way, or are you some sort of masochist? You're complaining about this situation. He lied to you, he cheated on you, and then he threatens your life, and yet you remain in that situation. Like, and here's the thing: is like this is not uncommon. Like there are tons of women out there that do this. Like they go, oh, well, I deserved it or whatever. Or they get their ass whooped and they go, oh, he's like my breadwinner. And so like I would never leave him. Like there was another girl, and this is a short one. I used to live near this smoke shop, and I'd go hang out or whatever. And the owner's son was this rich like Habib dude that would like he was just like he was like the mini boss of this like mafia, right? But he had this girlfriend that like literally we'd drive up to the shop and he'd be beating the fuck out of her right in front of everybody. Like fisticuffs, dude, like to the face to where she'd have like black eyes and shit. And one time I saw it and I was like, we should call the cops about this. And somebody stopped me because they were like, she's not going to press charges, dude. He bought her a fucking BMW and he bought her this and he like owns her. Like she's not going to fucking do nothing. And so anyways, I guess what I'm getting at here is like I'm trying to like resolve this in my own mind because there's like a logic that I don't understand and like I love women, dude. Like I love, like things about them that like I'm attracted to, which is probably the physicality of it. But like there's this part of me that's like I'm so fucking disgusted by like women's like codependency and like lack of like, general logic. And like how am I supposed to like get married one day if I can't even like relate to that at all because I think you're fucking stupid, dude. Like that's the bottom line. And this is across the board with like a majority of women, especially now in our day and age, like millennial women and like, ones that are divorced because they have like, some dude that just left or whatever. They're in this like mindset where they're super independent, but they're not. They have no capability whatsoever because they have no reference point. So, anyways, I guess I'm interested in your opinions and the audience's opinion on all of this because I'm kind of at a loss at this point, and like all of it is just like, what the fuck, like how, and the worst part about it, like here's the thing, what ended with that girl last night is like I told her all the stuff that I just told you, like, look, here's what you need to do. You need to get in contact with the police. You need to like get a restraining order. It doesn't matter if, whatever, if he owns a gun, he's threatened your life, then you're in danger. You need to make sure that that's taken care of, right? And then she like brought up some other like bull crap, and I was like, well, look, I'm gonna be honest with you, like you're obviously just using me to fill some sort of void. And then I like cited all these like quotes that she said. Like the first thing she said to me when she talked to me out of the blue was, "You're always honest with me, and I've known it was you the whole time, all these years." And I was like, right, whatever. And like, kind of like, just like I didn't like chastise her or anything. I was just like, yeah, I am honest. I'm never gonna lie to you. You're not gonna like what I have to say sometimes, but I'll at least, at the very least, always be honest. So I could tell she was like trying to have me fill this role for her, which I'm happy to do if that like, makes her feel better or like builds her self-esteem or whatever. Because despite what popular belief is, I'm actually a decent guy to women, even though I am kind of misogynistic and I see them as like objects in some cases, like so like in spite of that, I have a general concern. And so I go, well, here's the thing, like like here's the thing is like you have all this situation things going on, this guy's treating you like shit, and so you're coming to me to fill that void for the emotional and like whatever support that you need. So you're basically using me. And so I told her that. Like I was like, like I totally get it. I'm like, I'm not dumb, and I'm not like mad at her about it because I understand why she needs that. But I tell her this, and then she lashes out. She goes, "I'm not fucking using you." And she like, it was ridiculous, dude. It was like this insane like rant. And then it was like, a novel in a text message where she was like, You're just scared of the guy that he's gonna come find you. And I'm like over here laughing, like what, dude? Like, why would I be scared of this guy? Like, for what reason? Like it was like her just like trying to figure out things to like make me upset, I guess. And so in the end, she like blocked me, and I was like, whatever, like nothing new there. Like that's happened many a time. Like months from now, I'll get a message from her again where she'll be like, oh, whatever. And I'll be like, hey, like, what a surprise, like
Welcome
you're
back. Did you
still
get
that.
your ass kicked again?
So that's where I'm at. And like I said, I'm just really interested to hear like your opinion and like what our listeners like think of the situation.
Sure. I'll weigh in on it. I guess realistically, let's do this real quick.
All right.
Toast to misogyny.
I was gonna say the stimulus package, the stimulus check.
The stimulus check.
Yeah, to that, right? Some big ones, 1,200 big ones.
Yeah, your Trump bucks. That's what they're called.
Yeah,
Um,
hell yeah.
I was actually looking at body armor today. I was going to spend my Trump bucks on body armor because, if I got to fight the government, I'd rather have body armor. My opinion kind of ties in here with, which by the way, welcome Buzz Busby, with what King Cracker said here. Some people like to be the victims. They can't be any other way. They will purposefully put themselves in situations so people feel bad for them. Sometimes it's their own doing, sometimes it's subconsciously. And I can't agree more with that statement. Now, also,
Right.
I have to agree here with Mike in Manitoba. He says, "Sounds like being gay would be easier," and that's what they say. They say that two like a guy and a guy relationship will last longer than a guy and a girl, and a guy and a girl will last longer than a girl and a girl because women are just absolutely insufferable, and when they're put together, it's just lesbian couples never last. So that's just a fun piece of information for you.
Right.
But guys are
Well,
just
I
like
don't
they're
know.
just two dudes,
Yeah,
and they're just like, hey, you can hang out with a bro all day long, and then whatever. I guess some guys want to go poke the brown eye afterwards, and that doesn't even necessarily have to be a thing. I mean, maybe two guys just end up I don't know, getting married so that they have an extra set of hands around the house to
old
do
romance.
Yeah, to home improvements and whatnot. And,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how gay relationships work. We'd have to talk to James. We'd
Yeah.
have to
Oh,
consult James on that. Um, so
that's funny.
no, but King Cracker, what he said about people having to be victims. I have this um opinion, right? Of
Mhm.
I think people who lack personality will find a personality wherever they can get it.
Mhm.
And we saw this just recently with Twitch has made it so that women have to like dress a little bit more conservatively, like they're not allowed to show their boobs or their
Right.
butt. They
Yeah,
have
you're
to
telling me.
wear yeah, they have to wear clothes now, which
Right.
like my immediate response to that was, well, must suck to have to, like your only useful attribute is your boobs or your butt, right? And like if you're on a video game streaming service, so like if that was what was getting you subscribers, like you must suck at video games and have no personality. Like
Right.
there's a place for that. Like if you want to show your boobs.
He says that he doesn't see, he sees you, but he doesn't hear you. Buzz Busby. I can hear you. I don't know. Are you muted or something?
Weird. Is anyone else having a hard time hearing me? Please let us know in the chat.
Jealous.
Mike can hear me. Maybe, you know what? I think it is. Buzz, do you have like mono turned on, or do you have um one of your headphones or one of your speakers where it's only picking up one of the speakers? Because mine only I think plays on the left speaker. I try to keep myself limited to like one side of the room. I guess if you can't hear me, then I guess it doesn't me saying
Yeah, he says that hey Buzz Busby. He said that if you can't hear him, you can eat a dick. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. Yeah.
tell him what I said, please, V, for real.
Tell him what? Tell him what you said. Oh,
Yeah, tell him all what I said.
he says it's probably the mono thing. He says you have mono.
You have mononucleosis. But I'm gonna finish talking while you guys fill
Yeah,
him
yeah,
in the chat or whatever. Um,
yeah.
but these women, they were having, they have to like if that's your thing, I am not going to sit here and say you don't provide a service to the world. Like there is a place for that. Like if you want to show your boobs and show your butt, there are plenty of places on the internet where you can do that. But if
Right. Yeah.
you're using those to promote a video game
Right.
stream, then fuck you. Because that's
Yeah.
not what it's
I
for.
totally agree.
Go to
Right.
YouPorn, go to RedTube, go to X Hamster, go to like any number of Pornhub, right?
Pornhub.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
trying to think
Pornhub.
of like all the popular ones. Go to any one of those and do it there. And if you can't do it there, it's because maybe your boobs and butt weren't like what you thought they were.
You know
Like,
what's funny is I was like thinking when you were naming all those, I was like, I could name all of them.
well, you're
Let's
like
see,
you're
mofos,
a
brazzers,
VIP, right?
reality.
You're a VIP, right? Um,
Yeah, a connoisseur.
but I said my exact quote to this person who was bitching about it was something along the lines of like these bitches are too busty, or no, I said too busty for Twitch, too lazy in bed for you porn. These bitches are cursed. And I don't know if they've blocked me yet or not, but that's kind of my opinion on the matter. Like there are people who are so bereft of like original personality that they have to like find something that they can implement in themselves, and the victim mentality is one of those things where like what's easier than just finding a shitbag who can beat on you all day like you're like Rocky does to the meat in the butcher shop, right? Like
Right.
what's easier than that? Like you find a guy who will whoop your ass and like take care of you financially, like, and then that becomes your personality, right? And you're just constantly
Yeah.
telling your friends like, oh man, it's so rough being like an abused whatever, being like an abused woman, battered woman or whatever, and it becomes like their badge of, or their star of David, right? and
Yeah, everybody
they
feels sorry for them. That's interesting.
yeah, and then they don't have to
It's
really do
dang,
anything
that's I
with
didn't
that.
think of that.
And once they leave, once they if they do get out of that relationship, when they finally do, that's why they're so like, well, I can't leave, I can't leave, I can't leave. It's all I have, right? And they're not
Hmm.
necessarily like subconsciously they're saying it's all I have. Like it's my personality. That's who I am. I'm a victim. I can't do anything more than that. I can't better myself because that would require effort. And now we're in this world, this generation right now of like
Hmm.
identity politics, identity gender, identity this, identity that. Like once you are this thing, like there's no changing your mind. There's no being able to branch out. There's no, you become like in this closed bubble of outside, like no outside influence can penetrate. And that's what these people do is they've been so conditioned by this identity generation that we're in that they'll never leave it because it's just that's who they are. And anything more than that requires effort, and effort means that you're doing something wrong because everything should come
Right.
easy, right? I mean, we know that from
Yeah.
certain examples of
Yeah.
people that we talk about regularly. um,
Right. Right.
if it requires effort, oh, I must be doing something wrong, so clearly this is who I am, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now that's my opinion on the matter. I think women who just get their ass whooped or whatever, I think some of them are in a position where like especially if there are kids involved. Now with your story, this is why I asked, where are her folks, like where is her
Oh yeah.
family,
Right.
like
Right.
where are her friends? We've
Right.
all got a friend, right? We've all got, maybe your parents are in the picture, maybe not. But like a lot of these people, their parents are still in the picture, right? And you're like,
Hmm.
what do your parents have to say about this? Well, they want me to leave. And what's stopping you from leaving? Well, I wouldn't have anywhere to go. Well, your parents have like, I'm sure, a couch for you to sleep on. Like me, I'm
Yeah.
like, my kids are obviously very young, but if they wanted to live here until they were 30, that would be fine as long as I knew that they were safe. Like if
Right.
if the
Right.
other option is, oh, go out into the cold dark world unprepared, that would be on me, right? Because that's my job as a parent to prepare them for the world. Now if they get out there and something bad happens and they need someplace to go to be safe for a little while, but come home. Like that's my thing. Like don't ever feel like you have to, like, I don't know, like take a beating every night just because. And this is not just like a woman thing. Men get abused too. It's not as
Right.
often
Yeah. No.
reported, obviously,
Yeah.
because it doesn't happen as often, I don't think, as women. But also, like, what guy wants to admit that they got their ass beat by their girlfriend?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like that's the thing. Like if ever you're in a position where you're unsafe, like where are your parents? Well, they're, they want me to leave too. Well, then go to them. Well, I can't because then I would have nothing. Like I would be nothing. I have nothing other than this victim mentality, right? Or I have this
Hmm.
victimhood, right? So that's my opinion on the topic. I hope, Buzz, have you figured it out where you can hear me now? Have you been able to like finagle your shit to where you can hear the left side as well? Um, if anyone else has anything in the chat, we'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
do something else because I've already gone off on a rant here, and that
Yeah.
usually
No.
doesn't come till later in the show.
I think that's a good point. Just to confirm what you said, I think you're right. I think the whole victim thing, it's like it's funny how suicide and like attempted suicides are different. Like people that kill themselves, like they really wanted to die. They knew how to do it and they did it. But people that attempt suicide, it's obviously like, I mean, I don't know, not in every case, but I imagine it's like they're just trying to like look at me, give me attention, basically. Like I need help or whatever. They say cry for help, but really I think it's just people going, hey, I need some more attention because I'm not getting enough. And these people usually lack self-esteem and which the situation in itself, like that's how you have to look at it. Like the bitch is, I say the bitch, this bitch, this bitch's self-esteem is already so low that she has to stay with this guy because I don't know. Somehow she feels some self-esteem from like at least she's getting attention by getting her ass whooped. I don't know. It's still like some logic that I can't fathom and like whatever, dude. Like it's funny because like it's just so like prostitutes and like pornography is so appealing to me. Like like it's like what? Like I don't have to deal with like the fucking nonsense. So there's part of me that's like, you're never gonna get married. You're just gonna be a philanderer your whole life, and you're gonna, you're gonna like, just do that. And maybe that's the for the best of society. God forbid I should procreate. Could you imagine?
I don't know, man. I think you need to do what I do. You always talk about finding somebody to even out uh, your genetic material, right? And that's exactly
Yeah, I
what I
need.
did, and
Yeah, yeah,
I've been very blessed with that. And I encourage that. You got to find yourself a hot, smart chick who you know make cool little
yeah.
babies for you,
Good old
who will
genetic.
grow up to be awesome. Um,
Make cool babies for
you know,
you. Classic.
you got to have them help
All
create your legacy, right? So
right, right.
no, what you say about there's one thing that you said in there that I did want to talk about suicide, right?
Mm.
I'm a big anti-suicide advocate. I think suicide. You said it earlier, like it's kind of a cop out. It's a quitter's way out, and that sort of stuff. Um, or maybe you didn't say it. Maybe I just imagined you said it.
Yeah,
Uh,
cowardly.
Cowardly. That's the word. Um, so that's one thing that I harp on a lot because I had to go through that training all the time. I was one of the assist guys,
Right.
and I've intervened in multiple suicide attempts. So I mean, like I get it's important to recognize the signs and try to intervene when you can, but as somebody who has been, it's always like you sit back and you're like, you hear all this stuff about suicide, people committing suicide, and you're like, why? When would it get so bad that like, how could it be so bad that you just realize that that's your only option? And you weigh it, and you're like, my family, they'll be all right, this and that. You don't ever like think of it, but I've been there. Like I finally,
Yeah.
this is after I got out of the army. I've been there. I've had those waves that hit me where I'm like, man, that is appealing. Like I would love to do that. Like that'd
Yeah.
be the way to go.
Right.
And it's hit me. It's been rough, and I recovered from it. But and it took me realizing, oh well, that's all it is. Is it's just mental, like whatever, the chemical imbalance or whatever. So I'm like, this is not me
Yeah.
thinking this. This is like some weird science situation going on in my head, and I need to just ignore it for now. And then it
Right.
passes, right?
Yeah.
But then you have some people who are just like so in the moment, so impulsive. Um,
Yeah.
they, I like Mike's thing. You don't get to
Yeah.
choose when you get here. You shouldn't be able to decide when you get to leave. Um, yeah, but that's kind of my point. Is uh, I hate when people commit suicide. I lost one of my best friends from suicide many years ago, and I always call it committing suicide. Now they're trying to change the terminology within the medical community and the psychological community. They're trying to change it to death by suicide.
Oh
Um,
God.
yeah, so you're not like, it's not you that did it. You were the victim of this
Right.
like outside influence, which I think in
That's
some
funny.
cases it can be. But me with my theological demonology stuff, like I think that can be a case. But I think a lot of times like just some kid who like somebody called them Smelanie instead of Melody, like that. That's
That's a good
not
one. Remember
that's
that.
some stupid stuff that like people need to get over.
Right.
And that's what sometimes causes it, is like these kids, they're in a state where they're very vulnerable to that sort of uh, peer interaction and that bullying,
Right.
quote unquote bullying, which whatever. But like we had growing up, and I won't say what town I grew up in or whatever because I don't want anyone to look it up like I did with the other one.
Yeah.
But there was a kid who committed suicide, and he was a friend of James's, and he he shot himself in the head is how he did it. And here's the thing about men versus women. Women will typically statistically they are less likely to actually commit suicide. Men are more likely to be successful in a suicide attempt. Um, yeah, hopefully it'll work when it loads up,
I'll
Buzz.
I'll I'll let him know. Buzz,
Oh yeah,
everybody's
do
saying
it.
that it's probably you have like the mono setting so that I'm coming through left, or I'm coming through right, and Tom should be coming through left. So you might want to check yourself, force you wreck
Maybe
yourself.
plug in the headphone a little bit tighter, or pull it out a little bit and plug it in. Anyways,
Here's something you could try too, is just throw your computer into space.
you can do that.
Just throw it into space.
Um,
Sorry, no, go ahead.
But no, women are less likely to be successful. Men are more likely to be successful, and that's because women are more cowardly than men, right?
Right.
They are Men typically choose more violent ways to die that are more assuredly going to work or more likely to work. Women, on the other hand, choose the less painful, less graphic ways to go, such as like slitting the wrist or taking a bunch of sleeping pills and drinking vodka and that sort of stuff. But men will just take a shotgun and go in the bathroom and blow their head clean off, which has like a 100%, well, like a 99.9% clearance rate.
Yeah.
Whereas cutting your wrist side to side isn't going to necessarily, it's not going to work. Whereas you cut it a different direction or whatever. I'm not going to sit
Right.
here and advocate for suicide and talk
Yeah.
about it,
No. 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 Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
these people, they do it the wrong way, and that's either because it is a cry for help or because they just don't know any better and they're women and
Yeah.
they think that's the least painful way to go.
Yeah.
So this dude, he blew his head off, and because and I don't remember what it was, and I don't want to sit here and give bad information, but now they celebrate every year with like a softball tournament in his honor, right? The blank blank memorial softball game, the tournament
Right.
or whatever. And I'm
Wow.
like, and they invited me the first couple of years, and I said no. And the first, I think the first year they were like, well, I assume it's because he lives in whatever, in Texas or wherever I was at the time, and it would be too much hassle to get up here. And then like the second or third year they were like, are you going to come up for this one? And I said no, absolutely not. I said I will not have any part in that. And they said, well, why not? And I said, because I don't want to celebrate suicide, a quitter's way to, like the most cowardly, most selfish act that you can perform in your life. I'm not going
Yeah.
to celebrate that and reward that, because what are we telling future, the kids who grow up with this around them? They're like, oh,
Yeah.
this kid killed himself, and now that he has a softball tournament every year in his honor. Like
Right.
that's the good that will come out of this, and it rewards that sort of behavior, and I think that's shitty.
Right.
So suicide to me, like, I'm a little more tolerant of it having, I'm not tolerant of it, I'm empathetic to it, having been through those feelings myself. But at the same time, I'm like, I got over it, and I'm
Yeah.
like the most weak-willed person in the world. Like, I can't walk by a bag of Oreos without eating like five of them. Like I have zero
A
willpower
whole
whatsoever.
sleeve.
And
Just kill
and
a whole sleeve.
yeah, and these guys are like, and they're kids half the time. Like, your life is not that bad. What, you failed a test? Like, you may
Yeah.
have to like take that class again next year. Get over it. Oh, your
Right.
girlfriend broke up with you. Guess what? That's a girl from your hometown. She's already blown the entire football team. Like, don't let that stuff get you down. But like when
Yeah.
you're an
Yeah.
adult and you've got like real problems, it's still pretty unacceptable, especially when
Yeah.
you've got kids or a family or whatever. Like, shame on you, and shame on anybody who commits suicide for that reason. Like, just to like leave all your burdens on everybody else. And but anyways, that's my opinion on suicide, and like you said, it kind of ties into that too with her. If it was a cry for help with her trying to do that, it just makes all sorts
Right.
of sense, because it's like, hey, I need this attention. I need to feel like the victim again. I need people to like, pat me on the back and tell me it's going to be okay. That
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
victimhood mentality.
Right. Yeah.
So
So now that we've gotten that out of the way,
has it been
and I
45 minutes
appreciate
already?
your
Gosh
feedback. I
dang.
really do. I wanted to talk to you about it yesterday, but it was just like, I'm not gonna like I'll just rant about it and then we can talk about it here. So I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the audience for their feedback and everything, because it really affected me. Like I went to sleep last night and I was just like, what the fuck? I kept shaking my head like, what is with women, dude? Like, where do like why am I attracted to these retards? Like, what the fuck? And it's not like I can change that. Like, I'm never gonna be gay. Like, gay is disgusting to me, so I'm stuck. I like women. That's the bottom line. But I have to deal with this bullshit, So whatever. But anyway, so what are we really talking about today?
What are you spending your Trump bucks on?
Well, I told you I gotta get a tire.
Well, you told
I gotta
me. I
get a
want I
tire.
want you to tell everybody.
I gotta get a fucking tire for my car. I've been running on a flat tire, well, a punctured tire for months now that I need to fill up. And then I was thinking about getting a TV for the living room. I don't have a TV in my apartment yet, so I'm probably gonna do that. maybe I don't know, no, something else. Probably pay off some bills, a couple of things. Yeah, I
Nice.
think that's about it.
Free money. So I did a little research on this, and there were a lot of people who were concerned, I myself included, that this would somehow come out of next year's tax returns or deductions or whatever people receive on their tax
Oh
return
yeah,
typically. That
right.
was a big concern, and a lot of people were pointing out in the actual legislation that it says that it will be taking it out of next year's. Now, what these a lot of these like and I'm gonna poke fun at my own people. What a lot of these right wing extremists are saying about, and they're doing all the conspiracy type stuff, talking about it and how it's going to come out of taxes next year, and trying to like just kind of like damper the fire of excitement of getting
Yeah,
$1,200.
yeah.
Um, they're talking about they're kind of cherry picking, which is common among everyone. And they're forgetting that, like, yes, it's coming out of next year's tax return. Okay, understand that. Now that you're mad about that, realize that they've also factored in you're getting a $1,200 rebate next year on your tax
Yeah. Right,
returns. So it's not it's an advance of an additional new rebate on your taxes that you're going to get next year. So
right,
you are not
right.
losing $1,200 next year out of, if you typically get like $10,000, or if you've got like a whole family with kids and shit, and you get $10,000 a year from getting your taxes back because you pay throughout the year. You're not going to come away with, you know, 10 minus 1,200 minus 1,200 minus 500 minus 500 for each person in your family or whatever, equaling out to like $5,000. So don't worry about that, and get that out of your head, and tell your grandparents, because they're on Facebook sharing that shit right now. Um,
Yeah, I saw something like that too. It was like fucking New York Times or some bullshit that was like, you're gonna lose that money next year. Like just broadcasting it all over the internet, like fucking incorrect information. Like fucking assholes, dude. Like telling everybody like, yeah, don't be all happy about this money because you're losing it next year.
I'm like,
But
you know
that's not
what?
true.
Yeah, you have more things that you should be concerned with. All right, and we've talked about this. The You can be pissed off about losing $1,200 next year, which is factually inaccurate, or you can be pissed off that like we're inches away from this economic collapse, right? Uh, so they I mean, like, people are upset with the wrong thing. Like, if
Right.
you're gonna get the $1,200 regardless, get it, do it, take it, run away with it, go spend something stupid, spend it on something stupid, which is what
Yeah.
I
Buy
intend to
some
do.
shiny rims.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And because you can't, I mean, you can turn it down, but what good is that gonna do? Nothing. Especially if you're just like one drop in a barrel of people doing that. That economic
Hmm.
collapse is still coming, and so take the
Right.
$1,200, fucking run with it, and still bitch at the government and still revolt and all that. But but at the same time, like, you should be mad about, or you should be prepared for the social or the economic collapse that is coming. That is because of stupid things like this stimulus package that we're getting, of
Right.
because it was like $2 trillion that they
Yeah.
passed in this thing, and then guess what? They're trying to do a stimulus bill too, and that's coming out pretty soon. Which again, you could sit here and you could turn it down, but what good is that going to do? Because you're just a drop in a barrel. Like, be mad at the right things,
Yeah.
and focus your energy on that, and don't focus it so much on Facebook posts and shit. I know Jay
Yeah.
Coop says, oh, I guess Buzz Buzzby can hear me now, maybe. There's Jay Coop said and this takes us back to your topic earlier, V.
Oh,
There's
okay.
learned helplessness, where people put up with abusive BS because they've put up with it so far, are still alive, and convince themselves that no matter what, it can't be solved. Humans are crazy, and that's true. People
Mhm.
just
Yeah, that's true.
there's something from the movie Clerks, the which is like where I go for my philosophy. Dante is talking about how people are sometimes, they're like a baby with a shitty diaper. Like, if you ever had to change a baby who's got a shitty diaper, they all kick and scream and fight because they're miserable, and and getting their diaper changed is kind of like this act that you have to go through, and it's uncomfortable. It's not something that they particularly enjoy, but you got to do it, especially if
Yeah.
like the wipes are cold and shit. But so they would rather sit in a shitty dirty diaper than change and go through the effort of
Yeah.
change.
That's a
And
great analogy.
yeah,
That's a great
so
analogy.
you can thank Kevin
Yeah.
Smith for that one. I swear it was in Clerks. If it's not and it was something that I dreamt up, then you know, damn Kevin Smith, I'll take that credit. But oh, see, there it is. Yeah, I put in both earplugs in my ears. New to me. So, come on, Buzz.
Stupid.
Uh, so,
Stupid.
but you know what? And it's funny we're picking on him, but like I was the guy who he's like, I can't hear Tom, and I'm like, hey Buzz, did you try doing this like the whole time? Like I'm,
As he can't hear you. Can't even hear you.
and
So what
then
are
I
we
felt
really
immediately
talking
stupid.
about, dude? I don't even know. I actually didn't talk. Well, you told me the other day, but I forgot, and I've been doing a lot of stuff with my show, so I've been kind of busy doing stuff, whacking off.
Yeah, so beating it, huh?
Yeah. No, no. I don't I actually just to be honest, I don't know. I have no idea what we're talking about. You told me the other day, but now I forgot, and so now I'm kind of like in the
You know what I
what do you
want you to
call it?
do? I want you to
In the
go
dark.
on. Yeah, you know what? We'll just wing it today because I'll give you something to pull up here.
All
Um,
right.
I'll actually send it to you in a text so that it's a surprise for everybody else. How about that? And I'll start
Oh,
talking
okay.
about this first thing. So I have a theory, and I hope I can tie it into this conversation, um, because it's definitely a big part. I think it's a big part of this. There's something called ID 2020. Okay, and what ID 2020 is Bill Gates. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this coronavirus that's going around. You guys heard of this? Um, it's
Is that a joke?
that was my monologue. Hey, have you guys heard about this coronavirus? Um,
Jay Leno style.
yeah.
You guys hear about this?
You guys heard about this coronavirus? But Bill Gates is a big he's like a big voice in this coronavirus vaccine situation, which is hilarious to me because Bill Gates he's a high school graduate, period. Like he has no college. He founded and he built up this massive corporation, right? Microsoft, with nothing out of his garage, which is an accomplishment. I will not deny
Yeah.
that. And he's obviously been very successful. Good for him. However, he's not a doctor. All right. He's not a
Yeah.
virologist.
No,
He's not a chemist.
certainly
He's
not.
not any of these things. And yet he's like the spokesperson for immunizations right now. Now, he's trying to put together this immunization for coronavirus, for the COVID-19.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's curable. Like we've already determined that this hydrochloroquine is actually like I think it was 98 out of or no, I'm sorry. It was 48 in one study, it was 48 out of 48 was successful in using hydrochloroquine to treat the coronavirus, the COVID-19 specifically. And in another one, it was like one person, it didn't help them out of like 100. So, I mean, it was like the numbers are crazy. Like, it's obviously a useful drug. And I'm sure, like, the cases where it doesn't work, it's people who are allergic to it or who have built up some kind of immunity. Because I would imagine guys like us, because we took anti malaria pills or whatever when we were in the army, um, they like those people may have built up an immunity to those drugs, so it may not work in people like us. I don't know. And there are a lot of people running around fighting this hydrochloroquine, and I think we did talk about this a little bit last week because Trump owns
Hmm.
stock in a company that makes it, even though the patent has run out and anyone can make it in a generic format. So it's not like he's going to be making any kind of money by pushing this drug because everyone's going to use the
Hmm.
generic kind, right? And so all these people who are going out and pushing this well, it's not effective, we're not sold on it yet, but like all these other countries have said yes, it works. All our own studies have shown yes, it works, with the rare like 1 out of 100 cases it doesn't. So then we have people like Rita Wilson, is that her name, the Tom Hanks's wife?
Yeah. No,
She
Rita Wilson.
who the
Oh
hell
no, maybe
is,
you're right.
I don't
I
know,
was
whoever.
thinking of Danny DeVito's wife as
Oh
Rhea
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perlman. I was
No,
like, for a second, I was like, no, that
no,
can't be
that's a different
right.
lady. The no, Tom Hanks's wife
Yeah,
took
yeah.
she was given chlorine or something like chloroquine. That's right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
which is different than
Yeah,
hydrochloroquine. It's like
right.
when people say, "Oh, well, give him penicillin." Well, he's allergic to penicillin. Okay, we'll give him amoxicillin. They have two totally different, like, well, not totally different, but they have different side effects, right? And they have different purposes, and one works better than the other. Penicillin obviously works a whole hell of a lot better than amoxicillin, but amoxicillin is a great alternative for people who are allergic to penicillin. So, anyways, but the side effects are different, and obviously it's a different chemical compound. Now,
Right.
she's going around saying chloroquine does not work. It made me very ill. I couldn't walk. And when I took it, I'm not sure if it was that drug that did it or that helped me, or if it was just time for the fever to break, which we know when you administer hydrochloroquine, within an hour or two, your symptoms clear up. Like, we know that. We've seen it through all these studies so
Hmm.
far. So she's out there saying, well, we don't know if it was just time for the fever to break or whatever, but also it made me very sick, like nauseous, and it made me very weak. And then if you also look up chloroquine and look up the side effects, all the things that she listed were chloroquine. Now, the one that's being pushed is hydrochloroquine, which is a totally different thing, which has totally different side effects. And anyways, but this is like the sort of shit that we're dealing with right now. She's walking around talking about chloroquine doesn't work. I was given it, it did this and this and this and this and the other. It still worked, but it also made me very like nauseous. And that's their push. That's like their messiah. They're like, oh, she's going to go up and stand on her
Right.
soapbox and talk about how hydrochloroquine doesn't work. Well, you motherfuckers better listen because she said chloroquine. And it's a different. That's like saying, I don't know, like pointing at one thing on the table of elements and then going, well, I tried this one down here and it didn't work. It's a different compound, you idiot. And if you don't understand like the complications of the tri-bi-di, like all those sort of things, then yeah, you absolutely should not be the spokesperson
It's
for
funny
these
because
drugs.
we're over here like, why would we listen to some like Satan worshiping pedophile? We're in the know, we're like, I'm not gonna listen to this nutcase, But then everybody else, they're all like on Tom Hanks's sack, because he's like the first notable person to have it. In fact, even like Norm Macdonald calls it the Tom Hanks disease. And so, so it's like this big thing right now where it's like, oh, the thoughts and prayers for Tom Hanks and Idris Elba, and like we're over here like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, like
You know what I mean?
one less person in Hollywood is kind of a blessing because they are
Yeah,
a problem. They are a cancer on our nation and the
I
world for
agree.
that matter. Because you look at the sort of impact that they have on people, and you see like, who is this lady? Like Rita Wilson? Like, I've never even seen her in a movie and gone, oh hey,
Yeah,
that's Rita Wilson. I'm sure I've
yeah,
seen
no.
movies with her, but like I've never seen her and going, oh, that's my favorite actress. Like, I don't know who the hell she is, but like people
Yeah,
are like on
yeah. I
Twitter.
instantly confused her with Rhea Perlman.
Yeah, and like people, and this is like the sort of impact that they have, where people are like, "Oh, it's a celebrity saying this." Well, did this celebrity go to med school? Well, no. Well, then she can shut the fuck up because I'm not going to listen to somebody talking about these medications who doesn't have like a staff of advisors telling them, "Hey, these are the things that we're working on." One of which is hydrochloroquine, which has has had done great things in these other nations, and here's why we're pitching this one. And then Trump takes it and goes, hydrochloroquine seems to be the way to go. And then the doctor who wants to stretch this thing out for as long as humanly possible, an ally to the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is a part of the UN, which I have made very abundantly clear over the course of this program that I am very anti-UN, the WHO, not the band, who's okay, but the World Health Organization. I'm very much against that sort of globalization, global government, and all that for a number of reasons, not just theological, revelatory reasons, but for the fact that I can't fucking stand globalization. I think that a global government is a disease, and these people we're paying, what was it, like 400 billion a year to the WHO for them to do their or do shit, and then like China's paying a fraction of that, like a huge, and this, my numbers may be wrong, but they're paying significantly less. Like if you saw the difference between what we're paying and what China's paying towards the WHO, you would be, it would make you sick. It would make your blood
Are you
curdle.
talking about? Okay, let's pedal back here
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
I'm lost now. Like, You're talking
Oh, we're
like
just yelling. We're just yelling about
we
nothing at
got to
all.
an acronym that I'm not familiar with, and you keep saying the Who, and I'm going, are you talking about the band The Who?
Well, that's
Like
why I corrected
teenage
myself. I said not the
teenage
band, not the band.
Wasteland? Teenage Wasteland. Well, that's the only The Who that I know about, so you might have to
Isn't
clarify
that
that
song
for
actually called Baba O'Reilly?
what the Teenage Wasteland one?
Yeah, isn't it?
Teenage Wasteland.
Yeah, I think that's
How's
actually
that?
called some. I think that's actually called Baba O'Reilly, which they never say in the
No,
song. Yeah,
I
telling you,
thought it was.
telling
It's
you.
a good song. I'll say that. The Who.
But
No,
no, the WHO is the World
I was following
Health
you up until you
Organization.
started talking about, oh, the World Health. Thank you, Buzz Busby, my man.
I've been saying it. How many times have I said World Health Organization in this rant?
So, I was actually trying to find out what the fuck Rita Wilson was even in. And you know what? She hasn't been in shit. Every single movie that she's ever been in has been like a movie that Tom Hanks was in. So you know it was like, oh, she got a like extra role. And then like the other roles that she was in were like it's clearly like all part roles. Like she's never the lead. She's never been the lead in a movie. So essentially, she's nobody.
And
She's a
people are over
fucking
here clinging to her labia about this hydrochloroquine, or I'm sorry, chloroquine, not even hydrochloroquine. They're
yeah.
clinging to her like she's some kind of like I, I don't know. I don't know, V. I don't know what to
It's
tell you.
like a like that. What do you call it? It's like they're the stupid celebrities profiting on this shit. They're like, this is the perfect time to like up my publicity.
Yeah.
Like I suck at movies, but if I get more people to like me and I become the spokesperson of this thing, my visibility grows, and now I can get better roles in movies instead of just the extra part where I'm just some dumb extra in Sleepless in Seattle that nobody noticed, where my husband is kissing Meg Ryan in front of me.
She's the waitress that they tell her, "I'll have what he's having."
Oh man,
But
that's fun.
yeah, I don't know, man. That's where it starts, right? I mean, this is the problem. I mean, we have celebrities that people are listening to.
Well, I
That's a
see what
huge
you're getting
problem,
at
right?
now. I see what you're getting at now with what you sent me on the text here. So I kind of like I'm following now. The Who, when you kept saying the Who, I kept thinking, what? Teenage
Teenage
Wasteland?
Wasteland. I'm telling you, can somebody look that up? I think it's called Baba O'Reilly. Anyways, unrelated, but I want to make sure that I'm right because I rarely am. So,
And
but yeah,
then
this
those arguments, it's like, no, dude.
they're like, no, it's called Teenage Wasteland. You're an idiot.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going, I don't think so, dude. That can't be right. We're having like this argument over the worst semantics ever. That's
the
where we get to.
Because yeah, I mean, we have really nothing. Otherwise, it's we're arguing about it's not fucking paranormal, dude. Um. So,
And
but anyways, Bill Gates, right?
yeah,
He's like
please continue.
He's the champion of this immunization thing, and he has been since like 95, right? And I think this is what you're going to cover, so I won't get into it. But he's been like funding immunization programs where people go over to these third world nations and they immunize the kids and shit. And
Mm.
he's gone on to all these shows, and you can like watch Bill Gates talking about some of this stuff. Bill Gates, the computer guy,
Yeah, yeah.
watch
A
him
nerd, a
talking.
fucking nerd.
Right. Watch him talking about the stuff that he's done involving immunizations. The guy has like in the past repeatedly admitted to wanting like eugenics, right? And wanting
Right.
population control and scale population control.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he does this through immunizations. And a lot of times when he's
yeah.
talking, he'll either misspeak and like nobody catches it or he doesn't catch it. I mean, personally, if I was talking about something extremely important like that, I would make sure that if I said something, I would have somebody like kind of flag me down and be like, hey, you know, you just said you can get the population under control through eugenics. Like, please tell me if I say something like that. And
Remember,
nobody did.
remember on South Park when they do the console wars episode, and like Bill Gates like he fights the owner of PlayStation of Sony, and he takes off his shirt and he's just like ripped with like tattoos, and then he beats the crap out of the Sony PlayStation guy, and they make him out to be like this fucking nutcase.
Well, he is.
I think
That's the thing.
He is a nutcase. Well, I think it's interesting too because of like your preamble about this whole thing. Like first of all, like Bill Gates is not, he's not like an educated man. Like he didn't go to school for all these. Yeah, sure, he created a program, that made him a
Well, he
gazillion
stole
dollars.
that program.
Oh
Remember?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So essentially, he's just a fucking con
Fraud,
man when
yeah.
it comes down to when it comes down to it. And so he like when you think about that in like the grand scheme of things, and then it even ties into this whole Rita Wilson bullshit. Like she's nobody. You're literally nobody, and people are out there listening to you. The only reason why people are listening to you is because you've created like a hullabaloo about yourself, like some like fanfare, if you will, where people are like, "Oh, it's Rita Wilson, the woman that married Tom Hanks." Like, bitch, you're only popular because your husband is famous.
Right.
You're not even good. You're not even a good actress. But it is interesting the topic in its entirety and what I've been reading now on this the Wikipedia that I have pulled up here. Um,
Can I
it
real
seems
quick?
a
I'm gonna
little.
real quick touch on one more thing about Bill Gates,
Yeah,
and
no,
then
sorry. Go
we can
ahead.
move
Yeah,
to
go
the
ahead.
agenda thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So his plan is to create this, and somebody said it in the chat. That's why I want to hit it. Buzz said it. I can't wait for my nanobot injection. What they're trying to do is they're
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to create this digital identity for everybody,
Right.
and this is why when let me switch it to that way we're not looking at Rosie the Riveter while I'm talking. Um,
Yeah.
this way, like and the idea is that it's a what your phone does now, right? You can have all your information in your phone. You can scan it at the checkout. You
The
can,
QR code.
yeah,
Yeah, the
you can
QR code.
show people the documents. You can use it to get your plane tickets. You can use it for any number of things, like your IDs on there, your credit cards. Everything is kind
Right.
of on your phone, and you can use it for these purposes. Now, they want to take it a step further, and they want that to be inside your body so that somebody can scan you on either on a tattoo or on a something that's injected into you where you can like just
Hmm.
run your hand under the thing and it'll scan and it'll verify your identity and all this shit. And they want this all to be available to you so you can go to the hospital and someone can scan you and go, oh, this is Tom Miller. He's A positive, blah, 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 blah. He lives at such and such address. They can have all that information there at the hospital and they can know that, okay, he's got insurance. We can treat him. He's a citizen, whatever. You can go vote with it. You can pay whatever you need to pay with it. You can have your passport on there as well. And if you're traveling for any reason, people can scan you at any time and be like, oh, you're allowed to be here. You've got the clearance. Like they want to create this digital identity that is with you at all times, which is something you already have because you have a cell phone that does all these things, right?
Well,
Um,
wasn't there something I read something a while ago, and this might even be what you're getting at here. So if I step on your toes here, I apologize. But wasn't there something that like that showed there's like a formula in the barcode that like is 666? It's like the
oh,
number of the
probably.
beast.
That's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. Is like this. Um, nanobot or this little digital identity, this little capsule that they inject into you, is people have compared it to the mark of the beast because in order to do any kind of commerce, you need to have the mark of the beast, right? That's in Revelation, and I'm not going to pull it up right now because I'm ranting, right? But yeah, you can like in order to do any kind of trade. I'm sorry, to do trade, you'll have to have the mark of the beast, which is either on the hand or the forehead. Now, actually, I don't even think in the Bible necessarily does it say anything about where or how. But again, remember we talk about like John is like a knuckle dragging fisherman. He doesn't know what a little capsule with a digital identity or like that's way beyond him. So like him trying to explain it is, oh, it's a mark on your skin. I don't know. So that's kind of like where this moves into is they started to say that this digital identity is going to be the mark of the beast, and that's how they're going to tell. Which I think like if somebody were to inject something into somebody for easy access, I would think that the forehead or the wrist or hand would be the place to do it because that's the easiest. Like when you find somebody, you see their head. That's like one of the first things that you would hopefully see. and you could scan the forehead, or you can scan their wrist if you see their hand, or they
Yeah,
could put
the
their hand
risk
out,
seems
right?
like most logical to me.
Right.
And I'm not like advocating that this is I mean, I do see the pros and cons of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if they came to me and were like, "Look, we've got this thing," I'd probably go, "Well, it seems pretty beneficial. It'd probably be hard to like um have identity theft." You know what I mean?
Well,
But
no, because
at the
look
same
at
time, there's a
any.
part of me that's go ahead.
I was going to yell at you and say, look at any movie that they've implemented this sort of thing. What happens? Like they
Oh, they
carve them
cut
out
off
of
their hands.
people. Yeah, they carve
They
them
cut
out and
off
they
their. They
they
just
steal the
walk up to the
identity.
machine with the dude's severed hand.
Yeah, or they take it, they harvest them, right? They harvest them
uh,
and then they put them in people who didn't already get one, and then they
right,
can
right,
go up
right.
wherever they want and be like, "Hey, I'm Tom Miller," and then scan
Yeah,
my identity. Meanwhile, I'm like
honed
dead in
by
a ditch,
sci-fi.
right? And but yeah, that's
Right.
like my biggest concern. Well, that's one of my big concerns. But this is like the problem with Bill Gates championing this immunization. He's like, no, 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 you've got to use my immunization. Like this is my, I'm let
Mhm.
me do it, let me do it. And he's like really fighting it, even though we've already
So
cured the
it's already
coronavirus.
suspect. It's like,
Yeah,
what are
and
you
like
trying to doc?
yeah, so it's like we've already got the cure. We've got the government working on it. We don't need some fucking nerd from Microsoft to come in with an immunization because we've got people on it who actually have medical degrees and pharmacology training, not some guy who does TED Talks about eugenics. Like we're
He's
gonna
like
do this other
the
thing.
nerd too. Like he is the essence of a nerd. There's no way to like like when you think of nerd, the whole like image that he portrays, like with the glasses and everything, like that's him. It's either him or it's Steve Urkel.
Right.
You know, that's what you go to when you think of the word nerd.
So you go ahead. Why don't you talk about that thing that I sent you, and let's see
Okay.
if we can try
Um,
to tie them
the,
together
ag-
somehow.
the Agenda 21 here.
Yes, sir.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
I'll read the Wikipedia thing so that we have kind of a general idea of what it is, because I'm not familiar with this either. It says Agenda 21 is a non-binding action plan of the United States, no, United Nations, sorry, with regard
Fuck
to the
those guys.
sustainable develop. Yeah, fuck those guys. It is a product of the Earth Summit, UN Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It is on in 1992. So this is something that's been around for almost 20 years now.
Hmm.
It is an action agenda for the UN, other multilateral organizations, and individual governments around the world that can be executed at local, national, and global levels. So essentially, it's like, I guess, a way to like create global government, right? And then it continues on. It says the 21 in Agenda 21 refers to the original target year of 2021, so next year, where they were hoping to achieve their development goals by then. It has been affirmed that it has been affirmed and had a few modifications to subsequent UN conferences. Since it found 2021 was too aggressive, I don't know what that means. Its new timeline is targeting 2030. Its aim is to achieve global sustainable development. One major objective of the Agenda 21 initiative is that every local government should draw its own local Agenda 21. Since 2015, Sustainable Development Goals, or also known as the Millennium Development Goals, are included in the newer Agenda 2030. So they're saying 2021 is too aggressive or whatever, meaning like they couldn't make it to that, I guess. They couldn't make it to 2021. But a lot of this stuff goes on to kind of discuss um like the different sections involved in the agenda and then like the development and then like evolution of it. But if you go down to our portion where it talks about the US and what we have to do with it, it says the national focal point in the United States is the division chief for sustainable development and multilateral affairs of Office of Environmental Policy, Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs, U.S. Department of State. A June 2012 poll of 1,300 United States voters by the American Planning Association found that 9% supported Agenda 21, 6% opposed it, and 85% thought they didn't have enough information to form an opinion. So that says a lot. It says a lot. It says a lot because, like, first of all, 9% supported it. So who is that 9%? Like, let's be honest.
How
You know
much?
what I mean?
What do we consider the coastal elite? Would that be like 9% of the population?
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. And then 6% opposed it. So that's the coastal elite that go, "What? That's fucking ridiculous."
No,
And then 80.
the 9% is the coastal elite who knew about it and they're trying to implement it. The 6% is the conspiracy theorists out there who have read about it and we're all sitting with
Yeah.
our like tinfoil hats like, no, we can't do this. And
And
then
then
the
it
other
says
80.
85%. Yeah, they're just people that are like, "What?" Like they have no concept of this, right? They don't follow any of this shit. But it's interesting because this stuff dates back to H.W. Bush and like stuff that he was involved in. So I don't know, it's kind of like thick with literature here. Like there's
Let
a lot of
me,
citations.
would you like me to summarize it a little bit?
Absolutely. I would love it.
Okay. So here's the thing. Here's what Agenda 21 is about. The idea is to create a sustainable Earth that can feed and harbor like the people who live on it successfully. Is like
Right.
the basically the just the nitty gritty of it. They want to be able to feed everybody that's here, house them, and everybody lives a life that is sustained at that level. Now, the trick to doing that is we have a population. This is all stuff Bill Gates has said because he's a big advocate for Agenda 21. Is, you know, if you look, and I'm not going to pull one up, but if you look at, let me see if I can do it so that you guys can see it. If you look at like a population graph, it kind of looks like this. At like 1880, or 1800, the world population was maybe like 1 billion, and then at about 1900 it kind of does this and it shoots straight up, and now we're at close to what, 9 billion people. Now
Right.
that's unsustainable. We can't do that because we don't have
No.
enough food to feed all those people, which, I mean, that kind of seems like other people's problems, but whatever. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you
I'm
can't
with you
feed your
there.
kid, then why are you having kids? But
Yeah.
I digress. The Now the idea is to try to change this formula. He's got a formula for it for Agenda 21. And part of it involves population. Now you want to get one of the numbers down to as close to zero as possible in order to neutral or like even out the equation. One of the numbers was population. Now his goal was to try to bring population down. Now, how do we do that?
Yeah,
Right?
that's what I was gonna
Like
say.
you
There's really only one way to do that.
so
You gotta
yeah.
control the population.
So,
That's
and like a
a
lottery almost, and just killing off people or neutering people, right? Or sterilizing, you know,
yeah, I
that
guess
sort of
that's
stuff.
the point.
So this is kind of like the big thing with Agenda 21 is a lot of these nations have started to try to figure out how they're going to do it. And some of the things that have come up have been some very scary population control measures involving that sort of thing that we're sitting here laughing and joking about. Some of them have involved that. Now, the idea that what they want to do is they want to, and on paper, it sounds like a great idea because like everything sounds great on paper. But they want everyone to kind of herd into these navigatable cities that you can navigate on foot, that you can walk around, have these gigantic high-rise buildings, kind of like Judge Dredd, and like they want
Oh
everything to
yeah, yeah.
be
Good
within
reference.
reach of you. And thank you, and have everyone living in these cities, and then have, you know, vast like wilderness type areas where the earth can repair itself.
The Badlands.
Right. And
The Badlands.
I mean, like, I want to be like, Bill, I've seen this movie. Like, I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
how it
yeah.
plays out. Um, but this
Right.
is the idea of Agenda 21. And you can see it. And even in those Wikipedia articles, you'll see it. And you kind of have to, like, as with anything, obviously in Wikipedia, they're not going to print, we're going to kill off 10, 15, 20% of our population. They're not going to say
Mhm.
that. But that's
Yeah,
kind of
no,
what
no,
they're
no.
saying in a lot of
They'll
these
just
things. And
inject you with something. They'll
yeah.
convince you to get injected with something.
So
Well,
now
that's interesting.
now you can see Bill Gates and how he kind of factors in and why his stubbornness and why the stubbornness of this. No, it's not hydrochloroquine. We can't use that. We can't use a drug that's proven to be effective. We can't use these. We can't do these alternate methods. We have to do it this way. Like, you can see why a lot of these people are so pushy and very anti. And then you look at those people and you start to look at some of the other conspiracies that they're tied to, and you're like, yeah, okay. Now, like, again, we talk about how one thing, yeah, you can write that off and be like, come on, that just sounds like a crazy thing. But then, like, you continue to see a pattern from the same person or organization or country or whatever, and you're like, well, maybe there's something to that, now that, like, I'm seeing this pattern and I'm seeing this consistent
But
accusations.
what is I don't know if you said it, but if I missed it, but what is Bill Gates's proposition for population control? What does he propose?
He's said it a couple times. He's said it by lowering the, or by increasing the mortality rate among children. Um,
What?
and this is when I was talking
What?
about how he slips in his speech. These are the things,
Hmm.
like, I've found that a lot of times when people slip in their speech, it's because that's what they're, it's not because that's necessarily what I say. A lot of fucked up things on here. I've probably slipped up in my speech a number of times, and if you go back and find them, you'll probably find out. You'll be like, Tom, did you really say this? Yeah, that sounds like something I would say. I probably didn't mean to say
Right.
it on the air, but yeah, like, this is the sort of stuff that he slips up, and he says these things like controlling the population through inoculation, through increasing mortality rate, bringing down oh gosh, what was the other one that he said? But there were a couple of them. Like, if you go back and look, you'll hear all these things, and you're like, oh, well, that, well, at least we know now where Bill Gates lies on this whole thing. And somebody had mentioned something about it being the
Right.
mark. Oh, Jay Coop had said, "Is it going to be the mark of the Debo?" When we were talking about it, and I
Right.
think I have a
Right.
theory, and I hope, I was going to keep it a secret. Because I was personally working on it and I was trying to put together my evidence and all that, and but at this point, like, either A, people aren't going to give a shit, or B, like, I could use the help. I think that Bill Gates is the Antichrist. I think that that's my thesis, right? Or my theory.
Right.
I have to develop my thesis around that, and I have to, my hypothesis, I guess, is Bill Gates the devil or the Antichrist? Now, what I have to prove is, does he meet the requirements? What is his, it kind of like put all that together as kind of like my, like a paper. But then also, remember what I told you about that dream I had? And again, I was going to keep this dream secret, but again, I think there are people who know way more about this than I do. The
Hmm.
fact that I think that demons, we typically associate with, like, demonic literature being like the grimoires, and you can
Yeah.
see a
Yeah.
lot of the demonic writing and the ways that they interact and sort of stuff. I think that, oh, I had a dream that demons communicate through code. And in my dream, I was talking to somebody, and they said, you don't need to just worry about writings and demonic literature. You need to worry about pictures, because these pictures can be translated into code. And then if you take the bits from that code and turn them into certain languages, and it's a very complicated process, but you can determine that these demons are communicating with one another through these pictures that you would otherwise
Right.
just walk right past. And so I think once I had that dream, and then I had this idea that maybe uh, Bill Gates is the Antichrist. I'm like, well, he was actually in charge of a major, like, breakthrough in that coding language. I mean, the binary language or whatever has been around for centuries, but his
Yeah.
version in Microsoft and computers and that sort of stuff, is he kind of pioneered it, right?
Right.
So if that were the
Interesting.
case, then he would be the guy to go to. Now, these are all things that I'm theorizing about, and the more I see him in the news
Yeah.
now,
Yeah. Let's put
the
on our
more I'm
tinfoil
like,
hats real quick and then continue.
the more I'm like, well, maybe. So,
Yeah.
anyways, but that was, yeah,
Well, it's
that's,
interesting, and I just want to interject when you
please.
mentioned when you like divulged that you think Bill Gates is the Antichrist, and I'm being totally serious and honest with you. When I was a kid, when I was raised a pastor's kid, I was raised church. I had this theory that Bill Gates was the Antichrist. I used to say this. I'm not even kidding. I used to say the same thing. And it wasn't like based on any of the logical stuff as an adult that I can think about. As a kid, I just thought, well, he's got the resources. If anybody could do it, it would be him, you
Right,
know,
right.
create a global government. But now, it's kind of interesting. Like I'm leaning in your direction on this one because just because of the amount of things that we can see based on this Agenda 21, his involvement with this COVID shit, like the stuff that he's capable of. Like really, like he has unlimited resources. Really. The guy has unlimited resources. He'll never run out of money. As long as we keep buying computers that have Windows on them, he'll be rich forever, right? So that's interesting. I think the other thing too is I'm interested to know what your opinion is, and I love getting opinions out of you because you know there's always some like bias behind it, but it's always valid, I think. And like in this case, I you know, and you know my stance on this. Like I lean towards population control.
Right, right,
Specifically because I think we need to stop letting people that are not very smart continue breeding, you know? And like, you know, the idiocracy theory. Remember idiocracy,
right.
where the smart people don't breed because they're smart, and then the dumb guy just continues to breed. And so it's like that's my logic. Like I follow that logic, and like I'm so sick of seeing it when I go, well, you're just two idiots with psychological disorders creating a worse person. That's what you're doing. You're horrible people creating an even worse person. And like that's how our society is at these days. And it's even worse because you have helicopter parents now that they're just like so obsessed with like protecting their children that like they never get that to experience that shame or discomfort or anything. So they lack that emotion to the point where they're becoming sociopaths. And again, I'm like kind of ranting on this a little bit, but to the point where like we're creating more and more sociopaths, especially with like the internet. You know, the internet, you go on there and you're just this invisible entity that can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
You're a bunch of faggots. And then you go home and you go, man, that felt good. And nobody gives a shit because you're this, you know, you're the idea of a person on the internet, you know? And so you go home and you get away with it. You know, when you're a kid, you get your ass whooped for saying shit like that to people, you know, and then you learn your lesson. You go, well, I probably shouldn't call so and so that, you know, but now we've got this society where we just let people breed willy-nilly. And it's the worst, dude, because you've got so many freaking people that are just breeding and like accidents happens and then next thing you know there's like so many kids out there that are first of all either fatherless or motherless, so they're lacking that like specific influence in their life, which is a huge problem. I think that's huge. It's a huge thing that's going to cause a problem for that child and then probably people later on in their lives, you know, that child's life, right?
Yeah.
So that's my spiel for like why I'm kind of like in favor of population control. And like I know it's unpopular. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but a lot of times I go, well, Hitler had he was on the right track. He just didn't go about it the right way. You know, and I know that's like a horror. Like every time I start to get into it, I go, well, eugenics and blah 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 blah, and we're too busy letting these people with bad genetics breed with each other, and so now we've got like we've got these mongoloids,
So
you know, and so so no, go
let
ahead. I'm
me
just ranting.
no, I'm going to help you. I'm on your side here, okay? And if
Okay.
Yakov was in the chat, he would he
I
would
know,
jump in.
where's
He's on the phone right now. Let's get Yakov on the call. Um, I so here's my opinion on that. I think stupid people are breeding. I think people
right.
who have no business being parents are becoming parents, and
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
shame on them because and my this is where I get a lot of pushback from the pro-choice people because they're like, "Well, you're pro-life, right?" Yeah. So you think all these people should be breeding? No. Well, then you should allow us to abort our children. No. So you don't think we have a choice in the matter? I do. I think you should not have sex
Right.
because that's
Yeah,
what happens.
simple.
That's what happens. You
So
have a
simple.
choice. I am pro-choice in that matter. Don't have sex. And I'm easy. I'm one of those easy breezy Christians who's a little bit more like, well, take birth control. Use a
Yeah, birth control.
prophylactic, right? Do
Yeah.
something to
They
prevent
have
it.
really good birth control now, man. It's really
Right.
good, like especially for women.
And
Men can
it's
get
like
it.
it's
Birth
like
control for
five
men.
it's $5 a month. So here's the thing. Women say they should pay for our birth control. Well, why? Because it's expensive. It's like $5 a month, okay?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, men have to pay for condoms. Do you know what condoms
Yeah.
cost for a month of, like regular
They're
sure
way more
activity?
expensive.
Yeah.
Way more
So
expensive.
like women, are you independent, strong, independent women, or are you, like, or is $5 gonna
Yeah,
turn
back
you
to the
into a
topic.
housewife?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so that's where I am. I'm like pro-choice in that matter. Yes, your choice. You have a choice, and it's all before you get pregnant. Like, don't have sex safely, make sure you wear a condom, or take birth control.
Yeah.
That's a lot of choices I've given you right there. When you create life, that's no longer your choice. Like, that
Yeah.
is another human being that you're about to extinguish. So that's where I get a lot of pushback from that. But I think a lot of the issue too is then they say, well, we couldn't get an abortion because you conservative Christians got involved and you made it so I can't get an abortion. Well, you can put it up for adoption. Well, then it's going to end up
Yeah.
in the system. Well, then we need to fix the adoption system because there are
Yeah.
plenty of parents out there who are fully qualified who would give that child a
Yeah.
home with values and love that
Yeah.
child, and they can't adopt a healthy baby
Yeah.
because this adoption system's all fucked up. And then people who
Yeah.
are
Great
trying to
point.
give up
Yeah.
people who try to give up their kids, they're like, well, I'll have the baby but I'll give him up for adoption after
Right.
I have him rather than abort him. And then they want to keep him, and then it's a single mother situation.
It
And
just
then
seemed like, man, that's such a good point, Tom. Like when you like and like I think the whole abortion thing, like I'm on the fence about that one. Like it's tough, because there are some instances, and we've talked about this. We're like,
mm-hmm.
well, what if she's raped, or what if, it was like whatever, right? But the way you just explained it, it's like just have the baby and give it up for adoption. Like, how hard is that? Like, not only that, but like, even if you have a job, most places give you maternity leave, so you're going to get paid still, And on top of that, it's just a matter of really just giving birth and like, whatever. Oh, it's the hardest thing in the world. And what was the what was
Yeah,
the
the
pain
dells, the
level?
dells.
It's
It's like the
40
same.
dells, 40
So,
dells of
well, the
pain.
human body can only sustain 20 dells of pain, but to give birth, it's 25 dells. And I'm like, well, then I would argue that it's 25 is the highest that a human body can sustain,
Yeah,
like
threshold. Yeah.
based on science and the science, this pseudoscience of dells and units of pain and shit. But no, and then a lot of people like when you talk about rape and incest, I get it. Like
Yeah.
that's another area where I'm very like easy breezy as a Christian. Like I
Yeah.
hate to see an abortion, period. But if you are raped and you don't want to, and you can't, like, because that's a mental thing at that point. Like
It really is.
you
Yeah.
can have like extreme depression, anxiety, like all these problems, postpartum
And
depression.
like huge
Right,
animosity towards the
right,
child as
right.
well.
And I would say do it, but don't tell me about it. Don't tell people
Yeah.
about it. And then you have like people who go on Twitter and they have like trending hashtags like shout my abortion. That was a thing for a
Oh,
while. Like people who
Jesus.
want to get on there and talk about their abortion. And like they get up in front of people and they want to hold up like a gold statue like I killed my child so that I could win this or whatever. And without killing my
Yeah,
child,
yeah,
I wouldn't have been able to win this. Like why talk about it? Like just do it.
yeah.
And then that should be a place that you go in and it's kind of private. Like you don't go into the porn store and walk out like, "Hey everybody, look at what I just bought." Like we should attach that same level of stigma
Yeah.
to like where we don't pass by and look and see who's coming out. We don't go in and come out and like immediately hashtag checked in at Planned
Well,
Parenthood,
that
gonna
that
get my
really
shit scraped or whatever.
yeah, that really ties into what I was just saying is with kids growing up and not feeling shame or understanding like the amount of like impact that their actions have on society in general, and it's because of like helicopter parents, people like, no, no, let's give them a trophy for everything or whatever. And so then they grow up and they go, well, it's no big deal. I killed my baby, whatever, And then they have like this, like you said, that lady on the award show where she was like, I had to kill my baby so I can have this award. And it's like, bitch, that is a nothing. That is like, it's so, what is Napoleon? One of my favorite things, my favorite quotes is from Napoleon. Because remember, I used to do awards in the army and I'd
Right.
have to sit there and go through all these awards and like give people awards. But Napoleon said, a soldier will fight long and hard for a piece of ribbon.
Yep.
And that used to crack me up because, like, really, what is it? It's, like, it can have some, like, ethereal value to you or whatever, but really, it's just a piece of ribbon, or in this case, a golden idol, which all makes it all the more, like, profoundly stupid.
And what's
But,
especially classic about how this all ties in. There's probably a lot of people who are like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
I know.
Abortion. But this is like the sort of mentality that is, or this sort of like thing that is and we've lost a lot of followers while we were bitching about abortion, which is okay.
People just bounce.
Hey, that's okay. Because we're getting the good information out there. Now, these celebrities, they get up there and they do this soapbox like, hey, shout your abortion, get out there, go scrape your uterus or whatever, and get all that shit out of there, and don't have kids, and if you get pregnant, just have them scoop it out, and I encourage anybody who thinks abortion is okay. Here's a couple things, right? Well, I'll get to them in a second. But you have all these people who are pushing this agenda of like, yeah, abortion is great, do it. Do it for yourself. Do it for your loved ones. Do it for your career. Do it for this. It's okay. And all these guys, they're demonizing the act of abortion and all this stuff. And I'll admit, I am demonizing abortion. I am like very, very, very much against abortion because it's a filthy, disgusting, horrible thing that leaves one person dead and one wounded every time without fail. Now, I say that because if you've never seen what an abortion looks like, once that baby has turned into anything recognizable as a baby, especially, and this is what they're pushing this like late term abortion type stuff. If you watch one of those, it will make your blood boil. It will make you furious. It will make you sick if you watch one. And there are doctors who do this day in, day out like it's nothing. There's a difference between if you get your womb, you get the baby once it attaches and it's barely like an embryo or whatever. That's one thing, because like you can watch that and not know what happened. When you watch these later term abortions, like in the second, third trimester even, like, which they still sometimes happen, it will make you hate everything about the whole act, the people who do it, the people who encourage it. It will change your opinion on so many levels, because there were people who were doing partial birth abortion, which is a whole nother mess that I would recommend you looking into, because that too will make you absolutely furious that people are encouraging it or wanting it. This sort of stuff, like, people don't look into it because they don't want to know. It's kind of that ostrich thing where as long as long as I don't know what happens in an abortion clinic, I'm okay with it. But once you know, it will change your mind, which is why it's so funny that movie Unplanned. Remember that came out last year? It was about how somebody changed once they realized they were like the head of the Planned Parenthood, and they changed their mind once they realized what they were doing and once they saw what was going on. And the movie Unplanned has more Twitter followers than Planned Parenthood has. Like, that's how far we've shifted the narrative to like, wait a minute, And I mean, it's just so crazy to me that people can be out there and say, well, it's just scraping cells, when it's like somebody who's visibly showing and they're like, hey, this is inconvenient for me. I realize like I'm going to have to go on paternity leave. I might lose my opportunity to get this promotion. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this baby and we'll try again later when I'm more in a stable position. No, that option like left when you had sex without a condom, or when you had sex without birth control. Well, they're taking away my birth control. So you can't afford $5 a month? Like, come on. Like, let's think about it for a minute before you try to debate before you go to debate with somebody who is pro-life. Like, at least have a good excuse for your abortion. Oh, I was raped and it would have profoundly affected me mentally and psychologically and stuff. Okay, I forgive you. I know that was a tough choice that you had to make, and that is not my business. But why are you pro people getting abortions for convenience? Well, I just think it's your right. Well, that's a shitty decision. It's not protected by any constitutional amendment. It's not protected by anything. You're basically saying that like this barbaric act is a human right, which it's not, because you're killing another human being. And I don't care what you say, life does begin. If you do this, if you are pro-choice, and I won't hold it, I won't attack you personally if you are pro-choice. I will just say this. If you're pro-choice and you think that it is not a human life until it is born, the next time someone and I hope it never happens to you, next time someone has a miscarriage, that they wanted that baby and they have a miscarriage, tell them, don't worry, it was just a fetus, and see, if you still feel the
Yeah,
same
get
way.
your ass whooped. Get
Yeah,
your ass whooped after saying that.
yeah.
That's a
See if
good
that
point,
person
man.
sticks around.
That really puts things in perspective about that because when you really think about it, like it's growing inside of you, so it's alive. At the very least, like you don't have to believe in like souls or whatever, the afterlife or anything, but at the very least, the moment it starts growing inside of you and it's feeding off of your nourishment, I would say that's a living thing, and that's like you're killing a living thing. So what does it matter if it has a soul or not or any of that shit? What does it matter?
Why
You're
is it
still killing
legal?
it.
Why is it legal to kill? You can go and kill a squirrel, right? You can go out and stomp
Yeah.
on a squirrel, and they're gonna be like, "What the hell's the matter with you?" But they're not gonna. No one's going to arrest you for that. You can go and you can get an abortion, and that's a human life, and no one's going to arrest you. But if you go and you stomp on a sea turtle egg, you are going to jail, and you are going to pay like a $10,000 fine. If you kick an eagle's nest that has eggs in it, you are going to jail. So why is it I can go and abort a baby, a human baby, but I can't go and stomp on a sea turtle egg? Why?
Fuck sea turtles,
Yeah,
man.
why can't I do that? I would never do that because I love animals, and I think that I think
Right.
I'm just like, I'm not that type of person. But if I wanted to make a point, why can I go and abort a baby and not go and abort a turtle? Like, that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me. So that's always been my biggest argument.
We
But
got so way off topic. I mean, it's
no,
kind
it's
of
the
like
same. It's
relevant.
it's kind of relevant. Yeah. So
Yeah. But I think it was a good transition because it's still like what do you call it? I think it's
eugenics.
something that people should understand and like have an opinion on. Like, my biggest like thing that I hate the most about people, I'm such a misanthrope that when I talk to people, I get so disgusted by them when they have this like neutrality, like they have no opinions on it. Like, have you ever talked to somebody and go, "Well, what do you think about blah 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 blah?" And they're just like, "I don't know, whatever, I don't care." And you're just like, "Well, don't you have an opinion about it? Like, can you at least have like some depth to your fucking brain? Like, you just don't give a shit about anything." I get so frustrated when I talk to people like that because it's like you're just this, like I like to say, a monochrome cardboard cutout. That's what you are. You're just this fucking thing that doesn't have any. You're just a waste of space, of oxygen. Like contribute something for God's sake. Like and it doesn't have to be to society, but at least to like the people around you at that moment. Like I had this buddy, man, and like anytime everything was always this neutral standpoint. Well, I don't get involved and I don't like to like have a take sides or whatever. And like I'm the type of guy that like I will take a side right away. Like if two people are fighting and they're my friends, I'm gonna take a side and it's gonna be with the person that I agree with. That's
Right.
how that is. I'm not gonna go, well, I don't want to take a side and I'm neutral and I don't know. To me that's the biggest like faggotest pussiest thing that you can do, like to go, I don't know, I don't want to be involved in that. To me, that just says you're a puss. That's all it says. Is like you're such a pussy that you don't have an opinion because either you A think people aren't gonna like you, or B you're afraid that like your opinion doesn't matter, or C you're a fucking moron. So you're too stupid to have an opinion on something.
So
And all those things make you like to me a subhuman. You're not even worthy of being called a human being, which I know I'm like this is where my misanthropy comes in because I'm like so disgusted by humans that are like I'm in that era I'm calling them humans now. Like I'm separate from them. Like, look, dude, you're not like me. You're a subhuman.
So that's, I was going to say, there are times where somebody will bring up something and it's above my level of understanding. They'll be like, "What's your opinion on such and such?" And I'll be like, "Well, you know what? I don't know enough about it to formulate an
Right.
opinion. But let me hear, in your case, like when you're like, it's two friends, you can be like, well, let me hear your
Yeah.
guys' arguments and I'll see if I can." And you can usually
Right.
develop enough of a context and be like, well, that seems to make the most sense.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what you're a jury at that point, because
Yeah,
jurors don't know
absolutely.
law.
That's
They just.
fun. Isn't it fun though? Like to me, that's the best part about it is being able to formulate your own. Like that's like the best kind of conversation is when somebody brings something to the table and challenges you and goes, "Hey man, have an opinion on this. What do you think?" And you go, "Oh man, this is so exciting because it's first of all, it's something new. You're learning something new, and then second of all, you're getting to like mull it over and go, what do I think about that? And it's like you're putting your brain to work. So even if you're not like us, even if you're not the smartest guy in the box, you're still like charging that brain, like you're twisting, what do you call it? Cranking the fucking iron so that your brain starts turning and you're using it. You're putting it to use,
Right.
you know, and you're getting to go, well, what do I think about that? And like man, like to me, that's the best kind of conversation. Those are the type of people that I want to be around. Like, even if they don't share my opinions, I love being around people like that that can go, "Hey, man, like, what do you think of this?" and blah 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 blah, and then we can like pass notes, you know, like, "Hey, man, like, this is what I think, and here's my logic behind it, and like, this is my standpoint." And whether it's research based or just something that is like your core values and beliefs that you go, look, I'm going to stand fast on this because I really believe this, you know, in spite of what, like how we are with a lot of, religious things and stuff. We go, well, that's just what I believe, and like in spite of all your opinions and research and whatever, that's not going to change because that's my core value. And so because of that, you're able to have these like super cool conversations with people, dude. Like those are the type of people that I long for because that's the kind of people that you have long lasting relationships with because they're capable of critical thinking. You know what I mean? They're
Right.
capable of critical thinking.
If you
Sorry
can't,
for
I
the
mean, if you
rant.
can't, no, you're good. If you can't like develop an opinion, it doesn't necessarily, and we talk about this a lot, where we talk about you hold such convictions that you're willing to die for that opinion, right?
Right. Right.
If you're
Right.
willing to die for something, that's something that you believe in. If it's something that you're like, well, based on what I know now, this is kind of my opinion on the topic. That's another thing because I can still be swayed on a lot of things. Like if I come into a
Yeah.
conversation and someone's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Hey,
Yeah.
settle this for me," he says this and I say this, and you're like, "Well, I mean, based on the information, I can see he's got a few valid points, but you've also got some valid points, and based on who I am and my opinion, I would side with so and so because, and I would." Or evaluate or whatever and kind of explain myself to them and somebody could still be like, well, but what about this? And I'll be like, oh, well, that's a good point too. That's not something that I'm willing to die for. That's just something that like I kind of walked in on, and I'm like, I've never thought about that before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, Jay Coop asks, Tom, what's your opinion on why some people push so hard for abortion for convenience? I think it's just because we're in like a world right now where it's all about me. It's all about what I want and
Yeah.
all about
Yeah.
making my own life easier and making that sort of whatever. That's the world that we live in, where people are a selfish world, right?
Yeah.
You make a
Absolutely.
decision that, and this is where my theological opinion comes in, right? We
Hmm.
talk about why Judeo-Christian values hold some kind of relevancy in the modern world. And people say, well, Jesus said to not do this, or Paul in the epistles said not to do this, based on whatever. Now, you could be like, I could just sit here and say, well, Jesus said not to, so don't do it. Jesus said not to, or to practice sexual morality, not practice,
Right.
get into the sexual immorality. But what happens when you get into a world of sexual immorality? Like we see with the homosexual population, they end up with AIDS. We see with people who randomly gallivant around and just have sex with everybody, whoever they want, without protection. They end up with
Right.
STDs. We see, or babies, or they have to go through an abortion and then they have this psychological issue afterwards, or they end up barren because their uterus has been scraped so many times it looks like a fisherman's knuckle. So this is like, or like the side of the broad side of a blue whale, and or the underside of a library
It's all
DVD.
barnacled.
Yeah, it's all just especially nasty. So
Gross.
you see like these practical applications of the Judeo-Christian values are not just like, oh, Jesus said not to do it, so we're not going to do it. If you really think about it, you're like, well, yeah, we probably shouldn't steal because that's kind of a fucked up thing to do. And also, if we get caught, it's illegal, right? Like, and it hurts other people. There is like some kind of like lasting, profound effect that ripples across the population. It just in these small little things that you do that Jesus said, hey, don't do this. Um,
Right.
Even if you apply them now, you're like, well, they still have like an effect on somebody and hurts somebody else. So maybe
Yeah.
we should think about it. Or maybe I'm being, you don't necessarily have to be like, oh, I had sex with that hooker and now I have chlamydia. God is punishing me. Well, maybe
Yeah,
not. Maybe you just got chlamydia, and it's just like
yeah,
it's something that you shouldn't have been doing anyways because of the risk
yeah,
of chlamydia. So this is the
yeah, yeah.
sort of that's kind of like my standpoint on the whole issue. I could sit here and talk about how theologically I think it's wrong to have an abortion, because you're killing a human being, especially one that is innocent. Or I could just say, you know, I don't know. I mean, I said my piece, I think, on abortion. I think I did touch a little bit about it. I think a lot of people push so hard for it for not only reasons of selfish purposes, but also because of certain things like what we're talking about now, this Agenda 21, this
Yeah.
the eugenics, the
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to control. Like, they're basically creating the master race. And I think even Margaret Thatcher, was she the one? No, it wasn't Margaret Thatcher. Whoever it was that created Planned Parenthood, she was for eugenics specifically to eradicate the black population. That's if you look it up, please. I encourage you to look it up. The founder
That's
of
so funny to me.
Planned Parenthood was pro eugenics and very much about abolishing and eradicating the black population. And she said it
Yeah.
on more
Don't they
than one
know that's
occasion.
not how you do it? You introduce crack to the
Yeah,
ghetto,
yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly.
We all know that's
Or you
what
just
works.
you give them diseased monkeys to butcher, right? And then they end up getting the blood in their eyes and such. But that's my opinion on it. I think there's more to it than just selfishness. I think that's like the bare bones reason. But I think the reason why it has been encouraged, it becomes a selfish thing because people wouldn't naturally be like, I need to kill this baby inside me. But all of a sudden they have all this stuff, this outside influence from celebrities, from politicians, from
Yeah.
the media and everything saying, hey,
Condoned. It's
do it,
condoned. That's what it is.
do it,
Yeah.
go
It's
go
condoned. They
crazy.
go, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's another problem with society is condoning all this fucking like what do you call it? Not diabolical, what's the word I'm looking for? But just deviant behavior, I guess
Right.
you could say. Like horrible behavior, essentially, is we're condoning all like everything, dude. Like we talk about this like from like furries to like pedophilia. Like there's all this stuff that you're slowly going, well, we don't want to shame them, so they're condoning everything now. They're just going, oh, let them butt fuck a monkey or whatever, you know? Like at this point, like somebody's got to stand up and go, look, dude, that is fucked up. That
Yeah,
is fucked up. And you're fucked up for doing that. Like
right.
point the finger, dude. Like, come on. That needs to happen.
I think
Like get to these
we should be more, we
get to
should stigmatize, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Stop getting away from that. Like, start pointing out to be like with the abortion stuff. Like, look, man, sure you want to do this and we're capable of doing it for you, but you're fucked up for doing it.
And you
Make
know
sure
what?
they go through like an orientation.
What's funny is they've tried to make that law, and I think they've successfully made it law in some places where, and it's not even like anyone's going in and saying, like, because there's been some things where you have to listen to the baby's heartbeat before you can get the abortion. They try to shame you a little bit because not
Really?
necessarily to shame you, but to introduce you like, hey, this is a human life that you're
Yeah.
about to take. Are you sure you want to do this? It's not like they're not going to do it. They still do it. But then they have pastors. My dad used to do it too. He would provide counseling for
Right.
people who went to Planned Parenthood and had a baby or aborted. He would provide counseling, but he would also provide literature like, hey, consider these other options. I would
Right.
love to sit down and talk with you. And he'd give them pamphlets. And then they made it illegal for clergy to hand out literature at Planned Parenthood. And then they took it, and then it's been a back and forth thing over the years, obviously, like since we were young, obviously. Um,
Right.
it was Margaret Sanger. I said Margaret Thatcher, which I knew immediately once I said it, I'm like, no, that's not right. And then Buzz Busby said it was Margaret Sanger. Micah Manitoba
Oh yeah.
confirmed it. But I did look it up, and it is Margaret Sanger is the founder. But she was very, and it's funny is she was very like, she wanted to eradicate the black race, and then Hillary Clinton during her 2016 bid said that Margaret Sanger is one of her idols. So like these are all just funny tie-ins or whatever. But
Right.
let's do this real quick. Let's, with our brains, you were talking about this earlier. Let's go ahead and grind those wheels. What do you think
Okay.
about Agenda 21? Let's do it in two parts. Agenda 21,
Okay.
ID 2020. Let's give them some Bigfoots. What do you think, V?
Oh man, and like how are we measuring the Bigfoots as like one being like, yeah, it's not important, and five is being like, this is kind of like we should be paying attention to this sort of a
Let's
thing?
do
Is
that
that how we're?
because we know it's real. I mean, there's no
Yeah, yeah,
denying
it's
that they're
definitely a
real.
real thing. This is a real
Is
thing.
it something that
Um,
we should be worried about, or is it something that we should just blow off and not care about? Is zero Bigfoots and five Bigfoots is, hey, this is something, there's more to this than we're being told. Maybe that's three. There's more to this than we're being told. And then five is, we should absolutely be concerned about this. Let's go that route.
well, I think on this one, I think for the first time I'm going to be like, yes, we should definitely. So I'm going to say five Bigfoots. I think we should definitely be concerned about this because this affects us, dude. This is a real thing that like this isn't something that we're going, oh, it's paranormal, dude. It's no, this is like a real fucking thing that like we're engaged with. And you and I believe we share the same opinion about the UN, like fuck the UN, and we
Right.
should totally
Right, right.
not be a part of that shit. And this to me like adds to the reason like why we should not be a part of the UN is because I agree with you too about global government. I think is a bad idea, because then next thing you know, it's like socialism. It's like the
Right.
biggest fucking socialism there ever can be. Like now all of a sudden we're like feeding all these people in other countries and like, are their wars or our wars and like what the fuck, dude? Like come on, dude. It's an improbable ideal that will have like horrible ramifications later on that are like completely unforeseen because we're too busy going, oh, we can save the world and if we go together, we can man. So, like who cares? Like, and this is my opinion, like don't hate me for it or do, but like who gives a shit about feeding the people in other countries? Like really, I don't. I honestly don't. And I've told you this before, like my country, I have a lot of patriotism towards my country because I served in the military, and then like on top of that, like I grew up American. Like I what's the word identify as like Hispanic because I didn't really grow up Hispanic, so I consider myself American, and there's like a lot of pride in that, and I think that it will diminish that, it will diminish that if we have this world government, and I think to go with that, I think that like that there are all these problems in the world that like we can't solve because they can't solve, and then we still have things at home that we're, our country that we got to work on,
Right.
and I think there's some weird shit with Bill Gates, and I'm gonna go ahead and say like on record, like I agree with you. Like if anyone is capable of being the Antichrist, it's definitely Bill Gates. He's up there,
Yep.
He's definitely top five.
Yeah.
You
Let's
know what I mean?
create a top five list of antichrists.
Antichrist. Well, let's see here. Let
I
Tom
think
Hanks.
Jared. Oh yeah, I was gonna say Jared Kushner was one of them for a while for me because I'm like maybe I don't know because he was like his apartment complex was like 666 West Washington Avenue or something like, and he had like a number of other like weird tie-ins where I was like, man, that's like that would be like too obvious almost to, but
My dad had a theory that Barack Obama was the Antichrist because of his fair skin.
right.
In the Bible it says he'll have like fair skin or something. He was like, and the if you take that logic based on like the time frame and the location where the Bible's written, then
That would have been fair
Barack
skin, yeah.
Obama would be considered fair skinned. He's a light skinned person compared to the people that were darker living in that time. So that was his logic, so I'm gonna like concur with that because I respect his opinion. So I'm gonna go ahead and put him on the list too.
Yeah, I think a lot
But
of I think right now a lot of people don't realize this, like, and we've talked about this a little bit. My opinion is that we will see, I say we specifically, like everybody, to include the Christians, right? We will all see the first 7 years the of Armageddon or whatever, of like of Revelation, those first 7 years
yeah,
where a lot of that crazy stuff is happening. So I think that the Antichrist will have already been existing for a while, and he will have already risen to a point where we know who he is. So he would be somebody that we would know, whether through politics or big business or celebrity or whatever. We would know that person. So I think that
right.
yeah, that's when all of a sudden they're like, oh, we start to see these signs. It's like people are like, well, that can't be right. Like, I watched him for years. I'd never
Yeah.
suspected it. I think that will be the case. Like it'll be somebody that we know. All of a sudden, everything will fall into place, and it'll be like, oh shit, that was the
Yeah.
guy. Like that was him. Like I liked that guy for this or this or this purpose. But yeah, I think that's what it'll be. And
So what do you think about the Agenda 21 though? Are you with me on the five
oh yeah, yeah.
Bigfoots?
I mean, it's a thing, and we should absolutely be concerned with it, based on what I've read, and even beyond, like, even if I get rid of all the conspiracy type stuff that I've read about it, which is rooted more in illusion and like, well, the writing's on the wall. But if I just look exclusively at what's documented in UN, uh, the minutes from the Rio de Janeiro actual summits, if I just looked
Mhm.
at that, I would still be as concerned, because some of the stuff that was presented in those cases, I'm like, well, if you guys are it's one thing to be like, okay, a couple of guys like us, like, oh yeah, eugenics. I mean, that's the way to go. Or like when we talk about
Mhm.
what you call it, like the plague wiping out a substantial amount of the population. Well, it's going to be the weaker part of our population,
Right.
and we
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be able
yeah.
to move forward and evolve. Like,
Survival of the fittest, dude.
right. And I'm very
Yeah,
much
yeah.
for that. I'm very much
Yeah.
for the, well, if, oh, someone's like, oh, my, I can't afford health care. Well, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm unemployed. So you're
Yeah.
out, you know,
See ya.
you're not providing anything. We're going to move forward without you. That's survival. That's modern survival of the fittest. People think of it as like, oh, that's like an antiquated term that was used for the fucking dinosaurs and for or for birds, swallows or whatever down in the Galapagos Islands or whatever. That's what people think. They're like, oh, that's something that doesn't apply to human beings. Wrong. That applies to human beings too. Like if you are
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
providing, you can, we're going to leave you behind, because we got to evolve, buddy. We got to keep moving forward. And if we can get rid of the slow ones in the herd, that's going to take the hunters off of us for a little while. So,
Yeah.
and at the same time, there will be plenty of food for everybody. But these are that's one thing for us to say, that just a couple of guys who talk about conspiracies and Bigfoot's penis. Like
Are
that's
you laughing about the Michelle Obama in the chat?
no.
Like Mike and Ben.
See, it's going to be Obama 2020 or 2024. She
She has the balls for the job.
um but
Couldn't
no,
help that one.
it's one thing for us to say that sort of stuff. It's another for like world leaders to say that sort of stuff. And it's another thing, so it's another thing for them to think it and be like in
Right.
their private quarters, maybe thinking to themselves or thinking to their closest advisors, like, what if we just starve off this population? But it's another thing for them to show up at a world summit and say, we were thinking about starving 10% of our population. You know, like that's like the highest level of shitbaggery, right? And that's a problem.
That's like the villain in like some sci-fi movie. Like he
Right.
walks into this big conference room and is just all like, "This is what we need to do: is start starving people and blah 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 blah." Yeah, that's and he kind of fits the bill on that one. So we should probably pay close attention to what he's doing.
Right.
You know?
And then and that's always the villain, right? And that's what we're gonna see, is those some of those guys who propose that sort of like radical change. I mean, we saw it in the 1900s, right? And with communism, since with communism we saw all these world leaders that were willing to kill off millions, hundreds of millions of their population, right? Just
Right.
through this communist agenda. Now we can see it, and it's in writing, and it's in these minutes, and part of this Agenda 21. I think that's a problem when we have world leaders who are like mulling that over and considering it. Maybe even ones
Yeah.
that weren't considering it are like, well, that's a pretty freaking good idea. I'm not going to say it out loud, but maybe we'll implement some type of strategy on the down low, and we'll do that to our population, which they may have already started doing that in some places. Maybe that's what this whole pandemic is about.
Well,
And
here's
yeah,
the scary thing to add to that too, is we're talking about like Revelation and like Bill Gates, the possibility of him being, the Antichrist. And isn't that one of the things in like Revelation about a world government?
yeah,
I'm pretty sure
there is,
there's a thing. It's like the new Roman Empire. So
yeah,
now all of a sudden there's like this new like that's concerning,
yeah,
That's at that point like you should be going, maybe I should think about what I believe in.
Well, they were kind of like, and we joke about that every week. Like, is it my time to get right with the Lord? Like, are we seeing
Yeah.
the things of Revelation?
Yeah.
That was kind of what the EU was. There was a lot of discussion about when I was, because
Right.
I studied Revelation. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that's my. There are a lot of people who are like Pauline scholars, and then there are people who are like Markan scholars, and they study specific portions of the New Testament. Like, I'm a revelatory scholar. That was where I
Right.
focused the majority of my attention, and that was one of the ideas, was that the EU was part of that major government, because it's not necessarily did it say that it was a world government, but that it was like this sort of almost exactly to a T what the EU is, the European Union.
Right.
And that's exactly what they describe in Revelation. So a lot of people correlate the two to one another, but then also the UN could fall under that category, and then a world government. They've broken it down into certain kingdoms of what we currently are now. They were able to determine what would classify as one of the kingdoms as outlined in Revelation, and they've been able to determine what it would be under this world government and how it relates to Revelation and the prediction of this, like you said, the world government or the
Right.
large scale government. And that's another thing that you can factor into it. I think Buzz Busby said it'll be Elon Musk. Old boy is into some shady stuff.
Yeah, he's isn't there like a tie to him in the Skinwalker ranch or something too? Isn't he tied to
Probably,
that
yeah,
somehow?
probably. I think he was probably one of them that bought into it whenever they changed over the thing. That's the thing about Elon Musk, is like, he's a doer, but he doesn't really do anything. He just kind of like gets people to buy into him, and then
Yeah.
he
Yeah,
does
that's a pretty good
really
choice.
nonsensical type stuff like sending a car into outer space. And that's the sort of stuff that he does. So yeah, he's another guy who
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
would.
co-sign on that one. He's definitely he definitely is probably probably one of those that we should put on that list of possibilities to be the Antichrist, the Debo, as he says, the Debo. Classic.
So for me, it's 5 and 5. I know Mike gave it a 4 and a 4.5, and then Jay Coop agreed with Mike in Manitoba. I'm going to give it a 5 and 5, because I think that if I didn't think that they were worth losing sleep over, or worth considering
Yeah.
further or worrying about, I wouldn't have even brought them up. But yeah, those. That's my opinion on the matter. I think you should definitely read into it. We've only been able to scratch the surface here. I think if you want to learn more about it, I highly encourage going and reading into. You can read the Wikipedias real quick, and they'll kind of explain what they are. They'll give you the honest answer of, like, with no
Hmm.
conspiracy shit. But then if you go and you really want to find out about them, you got to kind of like type in hashtag ID2020 on Twitter, or hashtag Agenda 21, and then you'll get like the real crazies like us, who have compiled all the information for you and have been able to make the case better than obviously we did. We've just kind of introduced you to the rabbit hole, and we're inviting
Hmm.
you into the rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
as
So,
we are wont to do.
but with that being said, let's oh yeah, you got to use DuckDuckGo. You can't use Google, because DuckDuckGo is actually. I used to use DuckDuckGo a while back, but I've,
Ask
gosh,
Jeeves. Remember
yeah,
Ask Jeeves?
yeah, or Dogpile.
Bing.
That was another one. On what you call, on April Fool's Day, we were all supposed to go on Google and type in Bing, and then go to Bing from Google, so that like on April Fool's Day, the number one search item would have been Bing. And then Google never admit, they never, like, when you look it up and look up the most searched things for the day, it would not admit that Bing even hit the list. And I know there were like millions of us doing it. But anyways, with that being said, we will see you all next week. Thank you for tuning in. If
Take
you
care,
haven't
guys.
already, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, and tell your friends, share it on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram, all that cool stuff. And we will see you next time.